Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. Case 1. Anna Marie Cochran Rintola was born on July 30th, 1972, in Springfield, Hampton County, Massachusetts, USA. She graduated from Cathedral High School and received training at an emergency services school in Granby, Connecticut. After completing her training, she joined AMR Ambulance Medical Services and worked as a paramedic in Springfield and Holyoke. With a deep passion for her work, she always feels happy when she can help others in their difficult times and even save their lives. While working, Anna Marie met Cara Rintola, a fellow paramedic. The two have completely opposite personalities. Cara is calm, while Anna Marie is natural and open. Yet in 2004, they married, marking one of the first same-sex marriages in the United States. They later adopted a baby girl named Brianna. However, their marriage was not always smooth. On the evening of March 28, 2010, they had an argument over the phone. During this time, a friend of Cara visited their home, and when Anna Marie called from work to check in, she overheard the friend's voice. The friend's presence, without Anna Marie's prior knowledge, left her feeling betrayed. She believed Cara's failure to inform her of the visit was an act of disrespect. Around midnight, she texted Cara, expressing her frustration and stating that she hated their relationship. The following evening, on March 29th, Cara returned home to find Anna Marie dead at the bottom of the basement stairs in their Granby, Massachusetts home. When police arrived at the scene, they found Cara clutching Anna Marie's body, crying and screaming in despair. Initial investigations revealed that Anna Marie had been strangled, sustained head injuries, and that her body was covered in bright paint. Cara told police that Anna Marie had returned home around 8:30 a.m. after finishing her overnight shift. They had coffee together, played with their daughter Brianna, and had lunch. In the afternoon, Anna Marie asked Cara to take Brianna out so she could rest before her next shift that evening. Cara claimed she left the house around 3 p.m. and returned at 7 p.m., at which point she discovered Anna Marie unresponsive at the bottom of the basement stairs. She immediately took Brianna to a neighbor's house and asked them to call 911 before turning around and holding Anna Marie tightly until police arrived. During the investigation, it was revealed that Anna Marie's romantic life prior to her death was complicated. She had been involved in a relationship with Mark Oleksic, a married man she met through her job. Initially, they were just colleagues, but over time, they grew closer. On the day of her death, she texted Mark asking if he could pick her up at Best Buy at 6 a.m. Additionally, Anna Marie, who loved to shop, convinced Mark to co-sign 3 credit cards, including one with an outstanding balance of about $7,000. When questioned by authorities, Mark provided an alibi, claiming that on the day of Anna Marie's death, he had been out shopping and had receipts to prove it. Prosecutors also confirmed that there was no evidence suggesting Mark was angry about the debt, and Anna Marie had in fact paid him back. During her breakup with Cara a year before Anna Marie's death, she also rekindled her relationship with her ex-girlfriend, Springfield Police Officer Carla Daniele. During this time, she owed another $10,000 to Danielle's account before deciding to get back together with Cara in late 2009. However, at the time of the incident, Daniele was at the gym about half an hour away from the scene, and surveillance footage proved Danielle's testimony to be accurate. With no other clues to continue their investigation, detectives returned to focusing on Cara. Upon closer investigation, they discovered that Cara and Anna Marie's relationship was not only strained, but also violent. Colleagues had observed bruises on Anna Marie's body, although she often dismissed them as accidental injuries from bumping into objects. In 2008, Cara was arrested for assaulting Anna Marie, but she later withdrew the charges. Financial stress likely exacerbated their problems, as both were dealing with significant debt. Anna Marie owed $33,510 in credit card debt, while Cara owed $35,000. Additionally, Anna Marie had a habit of overspending and had secretly opened a credit account under Cara's name without Cara's knowledge. In 2009, Anna Marie and Cara each filed for divorce, but never finalized the process. During their separation, Anna Marie temporarily moved into her own apartment in South Hadley, but they reconciled in November of that year. In early 2010, in an effort to repair their relationship, Anna Marie and Cara took their daughter Brianna on a Caribbean cruise, hoping to start fresh. Investigators began questioning the timeline provided by Kara. According to her account, she left home around 3 p.m. that day, but she was not spotted on any surveillance cameras until around 5 p.m. At that time, the cameras showed Kara throwing a rag into a trash bin in the parking lot of a McDonald's in Holyoke. Upon testing, DNA traces belonging to Anna Marie were found on the rag. 2 weeks later, Kara filed a claim for Anna Marie's $512,000 life insurance policy. The payout, however, was delayed due to objections from Charles Cochran, Anna Marie's brother, and the contingent beneficiary. Charles argued that Kara should not receive the money because she might have been involved in Anna Marie's death. Following the incident, Kara took a leave of absence from work and moved in with her mother and stepfather in Narragansett, Rhode Island, along with her daughter, Brianna. She explained that she was not mentally fit to return to the home she had shared with Anna Marie. 6 months later, she sold the house and returned to work for the Ludlow Fire Department. During this period, she stayed with friends in Springfield and traveled back and forth between Rhode Island and Springfield to stay with her parents and Brianna when off duty. In April 2011, Kara resigned from her position and permanently moved to Narragansett to work full-time. Massachusetts State Police Detective Jamie McGarrion, the lead investigator in the case, stated that when he arrived at the scene around 7:20 p.m., Anna Marie's body was already stiff. However, the paint spilled across the scene was still wet, leading him to suspect that someone had tampered with the scene after Anna Marie's death. This unusual detail suggested that the crime scene had been deliberately staged to appear like a break-in. The paint seemed to have been used to cover bloodstains, and a nearby overturned 5-gallon can of paint was found. Additionally, a former medical examiner concluded that Anna Marie likely passed away sometime in the late morning to early afternoon. This raises the possibility that Kara was home at the time, making her testimony even more doubtful. Despite largely circumstantial evidence, Kara was arrested and charged with murder in October 2011. She is currently being held at the Western Massachusetts Regional Women's Correctional Center in Chicopee. Her first 2 trials, in 2013 and 2014, ended in mistrials due to deadlocked juries. However, in her 3rd trial in 2016, prosecutors presented evidence from an expert on paint drying times, as well as angry text messages exchanged between Kara and Anna Marie the night before the incident. They argued that Kara tried to fabricate an alibi by taking her daughter out after the crime. Prosecutors contended that on the day of the murder, Kara and Anna Marie had a heated argument, during which Anna Marie fell down the stairs. In a panic, Kara, frightened by a judge's warnings months earlier that Child Protective Services would intervene if the fights continued, strangled Anna Marie. Faced with the choice of calling for help and risking prosecution, losing her home, daughter, and livelihood, or attempting to cover up what happened, Kara allegedly opted for the latter. This time, the jury convicted Kara of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. However, that ruling was overturned in 2021, when a higher court determined that expert testimony about paint drying times was unreliable, leading to a retrial. Kara, who continues to maintain her innocence, made her 4th court appearance on September 6, 2023. During this trial, prosecutors focused on the timeline of the incident and did not call any experts to testify about the paint found at the scene. Kara's defense team countered the timeline with testimony from their own medical expert, who asserted that Anna Marie could have died after 3 p.m. that day. After a month-long trial, on October 5, 2023, Judge Francis Flannery of the Hampshire Superior Court delivered the verdict. Kara Rentala was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a lesser charge compared to first-degree murder. The key distinction between these 2 charges lies in intent. First-degree murder requires a clear, premeditated plan or extreme cruelty, whereas voluntary manslaughter refers to an unplanned killing that occurs in the heat of passion or during a sudden confrontation. The sentencing terms for the 2 crimes are also completely different. While first-degree murder carries a life sentence without the possibility of parole, intentional manslaughter carries a maximum sentence of 20 years. Ultimately, Kara Rentala was sentenced to 12 to 14 years in prison, minus credit for time already served. Brianna, their daughter, is currently living with Kara's parents and occasionally visits her in prison. Since Anna Marie's death, Kara and her parents have refused to allow Anna Marie's parents to see Brianna. Recently, a judge in Rhode Island granted supervised visitation rights to Anna Marie's parents, Lucian and William Cochran, who live in Springfield and often care for Brianna. Years after Anna Marie's murder, the people of Massachusetts remain shocked and saddened by the tragedy. Russell Anderson, chief of the Granby Fire Department, who had employed both Anna Marie and Kara as EMTs, stated that both were excellent employees who always performed their duties well. He shared that he wanted Anna Marie's attacker to be brought to justice, but admitted he could never have imagined the perpetrator would turn out to be her partner. Case 2. Tammy Epperson was an attractive woman who had a modeling career, but left the industry due to substance abuse, and spent her life on Skid Row in Los Angeles. By the age of 30, she was addicted to drugs. However, Tammy recognized her problem and was determined to change her life. She decided to enter a rehabilitation program, and by 2000, at the age of 38, she had successfully turned her life around. Despite a long battle with addiction, Tammy was able to regain control and break free from the vicious cycle of substance abuse. She had completely overcome her bad habits and started a new chapter in her life. She decided to help others so that they too could find opportunities to improve their lives. Tammy lived in Banton Plaza, a community designed to support people looking for a fresh start. The state-funded facility serves as a safe haven for those who are beginning to recover from addiction, as well as those who have succeeded. For many, it becomes a place of protection from the outside world. The area is fenced and guarded by 24-hour security, and visitors are required to sign a logbook upon entry. Unfortunately, these security measures were not enough to deal with what happened next. Tammy lived in a small studio on the ground floor, where she was attacked by an attacker inside the building. When police arrived at the scene at around 9 p.m. on November 13, 2000. At the crime scene in Tammy's room, all the furniture was destroyed, glassware, ceramics, and appliances were all smashed and scattered on the floor. Tammy's personal belongings were thrown onto the bed, suggesting that the attacker may have been looking for something. Police suspect the motive may have been theft or drug-related activity. Tammy was lying on the floor, her face severely disfigured. Police considered the possibility that she had been abused, based on the nature of her injuries and the state of her clothing. The small space of the room, combined with the brutality of the attacker, left police stunned. According to police, the perpetrator targeted Tammy, slamming her against the wall multiple times, causing serious injuries. Tragically, the attacker did not stop there, continuing to beat her once she was on the floor. He used whatever he could find as a weapon. The attacker violently attacked Tammy, and then destroyed everything around her. This would have created a lot of noise, but none of the neighbors reported anything to the police during the incident. The police noted that the level of decomposition of the body indicated that she had been dead for at least a day before the police arrived. However, all the neighbors claimed that they had not heard anything, which seems unlikely given the poor soundproofing of the apartment. A close friend of Tammy's had previously reported to the police that he had not been able to contact her for several hours and was starting to worry. Eventually, he heard others saying that Tammy might be dead. Out of concern, he contacted the police. The police took his claims to heart and decided to send officers to check on Tammy in her apartment. Her once beautiful face was unrecognizable due to disfigurement. A large screwdriver, discovered under Tammy's shoulder, was likely the weapon used. Deep circular holes in her face led forensic experts to determine that this tool had been used in the attack. One of the police officers quickly speculated that the attack may have been motivated by Tammy's beauty. She was very attractive, and it seemed as if someone had wanted to ruin that beauty. The attack had targeted her face and neck, causing severe stab wounds and cuts that would have left with no chance of survival. A forensic expert was called to the scene to examine evidence in the apartment. His goal was to analyze the situation accurately, reconstruct the sequence of events, and piece together a comprehensive understanding of the crime scene. He spent 7 hours working in Tammy's apartment. This was followed by many more hours dedicated to analyzing, recording, processing, and organizing all the information gathered. A significant amount of blood was found in the bathroom, while the body was found in the living room. It is likely that the attack occurred while she was in the bathroom. The attacker then dragged Tammy into the living room. Once there, they laid her on the floor and continued to torture her, ultimately leading to her death. Forensic experts were faced with a major challenge because the attacker used a variety of murder weapons. A stool, then a vase, and finally a lamp. All of these items were broken and stained with blood and were left at the crime scene, suggesting they could contain vital evidence and DNA that could help identify the killer. All of the materials were collected and sent to a lab for thorough analysis. What was particularly shocking was that the loud noises went unnoticed by residents of the apartment complex. During the investigation of Tammy's small apartment, police discovered several key pieces of evidence in the sink, including a rag that likely contained the attacker's blood. Police also found a water bottle with a red fingerprint and a trash can containing several tissues with similar marks. In addition to the attack, Tammy had been abused, as evidenced by her disheveled clothing and underwear. This was confirmed by a forensic expert. The forensic expert took samples from Tammy's body to extract the DNA of the murder suspect. Due to the nature of the crime, the police began searching for Tammy's relatives. Inside her apartment, they found several framed photos of her modeling career and an educational certificate, along with documents about her addiction treatment. There was no sign of any family, friends, or boyfriends in her belongings. According to acquaintances, Tammy had indeed overcome her bad habits and was living a normal life. However, she still had many suspicious people around her who were struggling with addiction. Not only did she overcome her addiction, but she also got a respectable job. Tammy became an office manager at a Hollywood phone service that catered to celebrities. She also volunteered at a nearby church where she supported people struggling with addiction. She took on the role because she wanted to help people in need, because the attacker intended to harm her appearance, and because she was very attractive. The police suspected that the attacker could be Tammy's rejected lover or a secret admirer. Soon after, the police received information about a potential suspect. A resident of the apartment complex informed the police that the attacker could be Ronald Sims. He had a history of serious drug addiction and was still struggling with his own problems. Ronald had previously dated Tammy, but their relationship ended when she overcame her addiction, while he was also struggling to overcome his. Despite this, they remained in touch and maintained a friendly relationship. Tammy believed that Ronald needed her support, so she offered him advice and guidance based on her own experiences. Police quickly contacted Ronald as a potential suspect in the murder. However, he denied any wrongdoing, claiming he had a friendly relationship with Tammy and that they had never fought. He insisted that he could never hurt her. Ronald shared a darker story. He said that Tammy had met a man in her church counseling sessions who had become a stalker. To ensure her safety, Ronald felt the need to keep an eye on her. This stalker was Troy Powell, a 32-year-old man who was on probation after serving time for previous crimes. The three were friends and often socialized together, attending church together. However, it was felt that Troy had romantic feelings for Tammy. From their first meeting, he began pursuing her, showering her with flowers and stuffed animals. He would wait for her in his pickup truck almost every day, offering to give her rides. During the citywide bus driver strike, Tammy would occasionally ride in his truck, though she usually rode with someone else. Ronald knew Troy struggled with addiction, and Tammy considered him potentially dangerous, which is why she rarely took him up on his offers. She told Ronald multiple times that she only sought Troy's help occasionally. However, Troy misunderstood her as being willing to rely on him and believed that he had a chance with her. In reality, Tammy felt obligated to help him overcome his addiction, but had no desire for a romantic relationship. She gave him advice and support while keeping her distance. She made it clear to him that she was not interested in anything more than friendship. Despite this, Troy became increasingly persistent, and his obsession with Tammy became more evident. As a result, Tammy tried to avoid close contact with him. Ronald believed that Troy was involved in her murder. Troy was aggressive, short-tempered, and obsessive towards her. In Tammy's apartment, the police found a disturbing phone book containing records of many calls from Troy. The notes detailed the times he called, the length of time they talked. Many of these notes indicated that Tammy had asked him to stop calling her. Despite this, Troy continued to contact her on the same day, and for a long time. Eventually, one of Troy's acquaintances informed Ronald that Troy had confessed to the murder. Ronald then reported this to the police. According to witness statements, Troy stated that he had visited Tammy. They had talked, but then they had an argument. In a fit of rage, he said he had killed her. Troy was missing and may have escaped. The police checked the logs of Tammy's residence and discovered that Troy had entered the building on the day of the murder and left just hours later. As Troy leaves the building, he is asked about Tammy, as residents are required to accompany visitors. Troy smirked and claimed that Tammy was resting, and the guards believed him and allowed him to leave. He was the last person to visit Tammy's apartment. That same day, Ronald said he had plans to work with Tammy at the church. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer, which was unusual. The church confirmed that Tammy had not shown up. The next morning, Ronald went to her work, but she was still absent. He was struggling with substance abuse at the time and was not allowed into her apartment. However, he noticed Troy's red pickup truck parked outside, which made him worried. He continued to try calling Tammy, but she still did not answer, so he decided to call the police. Police pieced together the events of that tragic day and concluded that the night before the murder, Tammy left church with Troy. They stopped at a store where he bought a Bible. Troy convinced her that he needed help and advice with his addiction. Tammy felt she couldn't say no to him, which led him to her home. Police investigated Troy Powell's criminal history and discovered a long list of convictions, including serious offenses such as drug use and distribution, theft, and abuse. He had previously served time in prison for assaulting another woman he was stalking, who survived. Troy was clearly a danger to society, especially to women. Despite his criminal record, he appeared attractive to women. Police were able to locate Troy's vehicle, a red pickup truck with a description. Ronald gave a detailed account, saying that he had seen the car that Troy had used to meet Tammy on the day of the massacre. The police had a breakthrough when one of the patrol officers spotted an unfamiliar car in the hotel parking lot. The patrol officer identified it as a bright red pickup truck. He checked the license plate number and confirmed that it was Troy's car. The police were notified and quickly arrived to arrest Troy. They stood outside the hotel, waiting for Troy to drive away. Troy finally showed up, and he was arrested. The detainee identified himself as Charles Vinoy, and after examining the documents, they confirmed that he was telling the truth. Despite this, the authorities decided to detain him and investigate the red marks on his hat. He explained that his friend Troy had given him the car the day before, and that he had taken it that night along with a jacket, a camera, and other items. Charles and Troy were former cellmates and had kept in touch after their release. The police quickly searched the hotel room and found a camera with film. After being developed, the photos showed Tammy, Charles, and Troy together. Charles said that they had all met at a church where Tammy supported people recovering from substance abuse problems. The DNA test took longer than expected, but eventually confirmed that the blood found on the baseball cap did not belong to Tammy. The police decided to question Charles, who eventually revealed that he had important information, but wanted protection from prosecution in exchange for it. The police agreed to his terms. Charles claimed that Troy had confessed to killing Tammy, who never returned his feelings. Troy gave Charles the pickup truck and planned to escape from the police. Charles Vinoy claimed that he had nothing to do with the case. However, during questioning, he provided details about Tammy's death that only the criminals or witnesses would know. It is unclear whether he learned this information from Troy or if he was present at the crime scene. As a result, Charles was forced to cooperate with the investigation. He informed the police that Troy was supposed to call him at 7 p.m. that same day. Charles agreed to assist the police in apprehending the killer. Troy then called Charles, and during that time, the police were able to locate location Troy. He was arrested while in a hotel. His DNA was found on Tammy's body after the attack, and multiple fingerprints linked him to various items. Tammy's blood was also found on his clothing, leading Troy to be held responsible for the crime. In his confession, Troy admitted to killing Tammy, but claimed that he was insane at the time. He said he had mental health issues and had not taken his prescribed medication for a long time due to financial difficulties. Troy was charged with premeditated murder, burglary, abuse, and torture, giving the prosecution a strong case for the death penalty. However, Troy denied responsibility. He claimed that he suffered from a mental disorder that made him unfit to stand trial. A psychiatric evaluation was therefore ordered, which ultimately determined that he was sane during the attack. Troy recounted the events of the case in detail to his friend Charles, who later became a key witness for the prosecution. Troy attributed his actions to childhood trauma, saying that he had suffered from abuse by his alcoholic father throughout his childhood. He argued that this had led to a psychological problem that caused him to react violently whenever he was rejected by a woman. A key moment in the hearing was Troy's testimony in his defense. He admitted that he could have been the killer, but claimed that he could not remember anything. He also believed that Tammy was still alive when he left the apartment, arguing that the murder was not planned. One of the most shocking allegations from the prosecution was that Troy tortured Tammy for a long time before she died. The jury found Troy Powell guilty on all counts, and he was sentenced to death. He is currently on death row at San Quentin State Prison, awaiting execution. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Sabrina Zunick. Sabrina Zunick was born on October 27, 1994, in Cleveland, Ohio, United States. Her father is Mark Zunick, and her mother is Susan Edwards. Sabrina's family lived in social isolation. Both of her parents struggled with banned substance and alcohol addiction. They were arrested several times. Therefore, from the age of 3, her grandmother took over her upbringing. By the age of 4, Sabrina was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a condition related to a nervous system disorder, which severely affected her ability to control herself. She also suffered from oppositional defiant disorder, anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. Throughout her childhood, Sabrina faced great difficulties in controlling her behavior. She often displayed aggression and lack of self-control, leading to conflicts with her classmates. This continued throughout her adolescence, causing her to become increasingly isolated and unable to maintain normal social relationships. At age 14, Sabrina was removed from her grandmother's care and placed in an orphanage run by the Lake County Department of Children's Services. She lived in the orphanage for 2 years. In 2011, Sabrina was adopted by Kevin Knopfel and Lisa, so moved to live with them in Willoughby Hills, Ohio. Lisa Knopfel is a compassionate woman who cares for and supports those around her. Lisa, born on May 2, 1971 in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, she is the daughter of Clark and Rita. After marrying Kevin, she moved to Lake County in 2000 and became the mother of 2 daughters, Megan and Haley. With a kind heart and a passion for learning, Lisa works as a social worker in the juvenile department of Cuyahoga County, Ohio. Her biggest dream is to open an orphanage where she can provide care and love to children in difficult circumstances. In here, Lisa met Sabrina. Joining the Knopfel family had a profound and transformative impact on Sabrina. As a high school student, she began to develop a love for learning, improved her grades, and started planning for her future. One day, Sabrina confided in her adoptive parents about her dream of becoming a model and pursuing a career in cosmetology. Seeing the positive changes in Sabrina, Lisa and Kevin were very happy and supported her. Sabrina also developed a deep bond with Lisa and the rest of the Knopfel family. Many people around them commented that Lisa and Sabrina seemed like real sisters. Sabrina often expressed her admiration for Lisa, considered her a role model, and affectionately referred to her as older sister. However, the peace in the family didn't last long. Problems emerged 6 months after Sabrina joined the household. Out of nowhere, Sabrina began accusing Lisa of not loving her and favoring Lisa's biological daughters. As the relationship between Sabrina and Lisa worsened, Sabrina grew closer to Kevin. Friends and family began noticing unsettling behavior between the two. Their conversations and jokes seemed more like those of a couple than a father and daughter. On October 27, 2012, Sabrina turned 18. Legally, she was supposed to leave the foster home and live independently. However, Sabrina requested permission from her adoptive parents to stay and finish high school. Then, in the early hours of November 16, 2012 at around 1 a.m., Sabrina grabbed a 10-inch serrated kitchen knife, entered Lisa's bedroom, and silently stood by her bed for 15 minutes, watching her sleep. Suddenly, Sabrina began stabbing Lisa repeatedly. Lisa woke up after the first strikes and screamed in pain. Her cries woke her 13-year-old daughter, Megan, who ran to the bedroom and saw Sabrina holding the knife. Terrified, Megan ran to call emergency services, sobbing and screaming that her sister was attacking her mother. When law enforcement arrived, they found Sabrina with several minor cuts on her body, holding a knife and appearing to be in shock. At this time, she followed officers' instructions to drop the knife and put her hands behind her head. She was arrested without resistance but refused to answer any questions once at the police station. During a search of the house, officers discovered Haley, Lisa's youngest daughter, locked in a closet. That night, Kevin was out of town on a business trip, he working as a truck driver. He learned about the incident when the police called him. Shortly after, Kevin called 911 to check on the condition of his daughters. He was told he could come to the police station to pick them up. The next day, Kevin arrived at the police station with an unexpectedly calm demeanor. His unusual composure surprised the officers. They thought they would see a man grieving over his murdered wife, but he seemed unperturbed. Without answering any questions, Kevin quietly took his daughters home, without showing any obvious emotion. Kevin's attitude not only hard to understand the police, but also aroused concern from his and Lisa's relatives and friends. They found it strange that he did not appear sad or depressed after such a great tragedy. Immediately afterwards, Kevin tried to request to visit Sabrina in prison, but this request was denied. When he was not allowed to see Sabrina, Kevin's calm demeanor quickly turned to anger. He returned home with a visibly upset expression. The brutal crime shocked the local media. Lake County Police revealed that Lisa had sustained 178 injuries to her head, neck, torso, and limbs. Although Sabrina was quickly identified as the killer, investigators were initially baffled by her motive for committing such an appalling act. In the 10 months following the murder, detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the evidence. The suspicious relationship between Sabrina and Kevin became the focus of the investigation. Through interviews with those involved, some remarkable information emerged, shedding light on the complex nature of the case. One of the first revelations came from a close friend of Sabrina's. She said that Sabrina had confided that she had allowed Kevin to take nude photos of her in exchange for money. This event immediately raised suspicions about an illicit relationship between Kevin and his adopted daughter. In addition, just a week before the murder, Kevin had contacted a social worker to inform her that he and Lisa were considering divorce. During this conversation, Kevin expressed his intention to retain custody of Sabrina. Another shocking detail came from the testimony of another friend of Sabrina's. This person said that in early October 2012, Kevin asked her to help him find a hitman. This information led investigators to suspect that Kevin might be the mastermind behind the murder. During further investigation, police discovered that Kevin had purchased 2 life insurance policies worth a total of $800,000 in Lisa's name. Just days later, she was declared dead. Immediately after the murder, Kevin began spending lavishly, buying many expensive items. These actions were not only suspicious, but also suggested that Kevin had a financial motive for his wife's death. Initially, Sabrina denied any involvement of Kevin in the case. However, after 9 months in custody, in August 2013, she changed her testimony. Feeling abandoned by her adoptive father and not supported in her difficult situation, Sabrina decided to cooperate with investigators. In her testimony, she provides important details about Kevin's role and motive in killing Lisa, bringing the case to a crucial turning point. Sabrina accused Kevin of orchestrating Lisa's murder and shared specific details about their romantic relationship. She claimed her motive for killing Lisa was her deep love for Kevin and her refusal to share him with anyone else. According to Sabrina, their affair began in March 2012, when Kevin returned home exhausted from long hours of truck driving. Complaining of leg pain, Sabrina offered to massage his feet, which marked the beginning of their growing attraction. By September of that year, they had developed an intimate relationship. Sabrina stated that Lisa never suspected their affair because they behaved carefully. Kevin frequently sent Sabrina messages expressing his lack of love for Lisa and his desire to build a new life with Sabrina. Kevin proposed a plan to Sabrina, promising her a stable future funded by money from Lisa's insurance policies. He assured her that he would provide a house and a car, and suggested she could take Lisa's place as the daughter's mother. Sabrina hesitated, suggesting instead that Kevin file for divorce. However, Kevin rejected this idea, claiming Lisa would take the daughters away from him if they were to separate. He repeatedly joked that a dead Lisa was worth much more than a living one. Gradually, Kevin's plan to eliminate Lisa took shape, and they decided that Sabrina would kill Lisa by stabbing her. To make the murder appear as a failed robbery, Sabrina would also steal some of Lisa's jewelry. Kevin took additional steps to carry out the plan. He purchased the intended for the murder and researched how to deliver fatal blows to the victim. He also instructed Sabrina to feign mental instability if she were ever arrested. Sabrina revealed that the final turning point occurred on the morning of November 15th, the day before the murder. While driving her to school, Kevin abruptly stopped the car and began crying. He admitted to Sabrina that he had fought with Lisa the previous night and confessed that he would self-harm if Lisa remained alive. Fearing that the man she loved might take his end life, Sabrina resolved to kill Lisa. Based on Sabrina's testimony, investigators decided to arrest Kevin. On August 9, 2013, he was taken into custody. He charged with conspiracy to commit aggravated murder and accessory to murder. In exchange for the possibility of parole, Sabrina agreed to testify against him. Besides, The defense has announced plans to appeal the verdict and intends to focus on expert testimony regarding Sabrina's mental health issues, arguing that her mental disorders were the sole reason she committed the murder. The trial of Kevin began in May 2014, the prosecutor asserting that there was no doubt Sabrina committed the murder. However, he stressed that Kevin was fully aware of what would happen on November 16th and actively assisted Sabrina in planning the crime, which made him equally culpable. When Sabrina testified, she admitted to having an affair with Kevin and explained how they planned the crime together. She claimed the plan was Kevin's idea and said she went through with it only because she loved him and didn't want him to suffer. Sabrina told the jury she wanted justice, emphasizing that she wasn't the sole person involved. The prosecution focused on Kevin's suspicious behavior after Lisa's death, in an attempt to clarify his motives and his unusual demeanor. The police officer who met Kevin the day after the murder testified that Kevin appeared unusually calm and unemotional under such circumstances. A co-worker of Lisa's was also called to testify. She recalled that she brought food to Kevin's home after Lisa's death to comfort the family. However, she noticed that Kevin acted very calmly, seemingly unaffected by the loss. Lisa's co-worker also said that at the funeral, Kevin did not show any signs of grief, which struck her and others as unusual. In addition, a representative from the insurance company was also called to testify. This person revealed that Kevin had contacted them the morning after the murder, asking about the claim procedure from the life insurance policy he had purchased for Lisa not long before. These details were presented by the prosecution to highlight Kevin's cold and calculating nature in the events surrounding Lisa's death. The trial also included testimony from the Lake County medical examiner, who described the horrific injuries Lisa sustained. He detailed 2 fatal wounds, one to her jaw, which severed her carotid artery, and another to her chest. The examiner added that the large number of wounds indicated Lisa resisted fiercely and fought for her life for several minutes before succumbing to her injuries. These gruesome descriptions underscored the brutality of the crime. Although investigators could not provide copies of the text messages exchanged between Sabrina and Kevin, they presented data on the number of messages and calls exchanged. According to the operator, the two exchanged 1,491 text messages and made 78 calls between November 1st and November 16th, 2012. Kevin's lawyer argued that Sabrina should be considered solely responsible for Lisa's murder. He pointed out that investigators had no physical evidence proving Sabrina and Kevin were lovers. Furthermore, there were no specific text messages that directly implicated Kevin in planning Lisa's death. The defense argued that the prosecution's case rested entirely on Sabrina's testimony, which secured her a reduced sentence in return. The lawyer asserted that Kevin should be released, claiming the charges against him were baseless. He argued that Sabrina killed her adoptive mother not because of Kevin's influence, but because Lisa, 2 weeks earlier, had demanded Sabrina move out of their house by January 1st, 2013. Meanwhile, Kevin refused to testify in court. Next, after a 9.5-hour hearing on June 11th, the jury found Kevin Knofel guilty on all 11 charges. On August 6, 2014, Judge Joseph Gibson sentenced Kevin to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. This means Kevin will be eligible for parole in 2044, at the age of 73. After the trial, in which Sabrina gave detailed testimony about her role in Lisa's murder, the judges found her guilty of premeditated murder with aggravating circumstances. During the trial, Sabrina's defense attorney emphasized that she had admitted her guilt. Sabrina also confirmed this admission during a hearing in August 2014, expressing remorse for her actions. On September 29, 2014, at the age of 19, Sabrina Zunick was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. This means she will be eligible for parole in 2042, when she turns 47. Sabrina broke down in tears upon hearing the verdict. In explaining the sentence, the judge stated that the only reason Sabrina was being considered for parole was her cooperation with investigators. However, the judge also noted that, although Kevin manipulated and used Sabrina to carry out his plot, her brutal actions went far beyond original plan. In addition to the life sentence, the court ordered Sabrina to pay $6 million in compensation to Lisa's 2 biological daughters, Megan and Haley Knofel, to help them overcome the emotional and financial losses caused by their mother's death. Currently, Sabrina is serving her sentence at the Dayton Correctional Facility, a women's detention center in Ohio. The prison, established in 1987, is known for its rehabilitation and education programs designed to help inmates rebuild their lives. Sabrina will spend most of her life in prison, facing the consequences of her actions and the indelible memories of a murder that changed many lives forever. Case 3. The case of Doreen Erbert. Doreen Erbert was born on November 29, 1952, in California, into a family of 5 children. From a young age, she was a kind and positive person, always looking for ways to help others. After graduating from college, Doreen moved to San Francisco and began working as a physical therapist. At the age of 24, she met Michael Venice, a man who worked in a factory near Doreen's clinic. After getting to know each other for a while, Doreen and Michael started dating, and a few months later, they decided to get married. In 1976, they had a son named Paul. Initially, Michael and Doreen's life was very happy, but after having a child, their relationship began to have problems. After about a year, Doreen and Michael decided to divorce. Their son was raised by Doreen, while Michael was still allowed to visit him regularly. Despite the divorce, Michael and Doreen maintained a cordial relationship. A year later, Doreen met a man named Charles. They began dating, got married, and decided to move to San Jose, settling in a quiet residential area. In 1979, their daughter Deanna was born. Charles, like his wife, dreamed of having a large family. He was overjoyed when their daughter was born. However, tragedy struck the family in February 1980. 4-year-old Paul climbed over the fence around the pool and fell into the water. Doreen, who was home at the time, realized what had happened too late. She pulled her son out of the water and called an ambulance. Paul was taken to the hospital and put on life support. However, after 10 days, doctors concluded that there was no chance of survival. The decision was made to disconnect the boy from the machines. Doreen became depressed and devastated, blaming herself constantly, even though the police concluded that it was not her fault. However, Doreen's young daughter Deanna helped her through this pain. For years after the tragic event, Doreen's family finally had some good news. Doreen and Charles had been trying for another child, although they had failed twice due to interrupted pregnancies. But Doreen finally became pregnant again, and this time, everything went well. They were expecting a new baby boy, due in early November. A few days before Doreen was to be admitted to the hospital, her family decided to join in the Halloween festivities. On the evening of October 31st, all the neighbors decorated their houses and handed out candy to the children. Deanna, who was 4 years old at the time, was very keen to join in, and her parents couldn't say no. Although Doreen was 9 months pregnant, she went trick-or-treating with her daughter while Charles stayed home, handing out candy to other children. The mother and daughter returned home just before 9 p.m. Charles informed his wife that they were running out of candy and that he planned to drive to the nearest store to buy more. He left the house around 8:50 p.m. and returned about 15 minutes later. As he approached the house, Charles noticed that the front door was slightly ajar, which he found strange. When he entered, he found his wife lying on the hallway floor, surrounded by a large amount of blood. Doreen showed no signs of life, and Charles immediately called 911. Shortly thereafter, he noticed the body of their unborn child in the living room. Charles was in a state of shock, unable to believe what he was seeing. Initially, he thought that Doreen might have had a miscarriage, but he quickly realized that the situation was much worse. Beside the child was a human hand, and Charles immediately understood that it was Doreen's hand. When Charles realized that his family was being attacked, he began searching for Deanna, fearing she might be in danger. He saw so much blood on the floor that he slipped and fell while running through the house. Luckily, Deanna was still alive, but she was hiding behind the sofa in the living room out of fear. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics found Doreen and discovered that she had a weak pulse. They rushed her to the hospital, but unfortunately, doctors were unable to save her, and she died in the ambulance. Tragically, Doreen's unborn child also died from the brutal attack. Medical experts examined Doreen's body and concluded that she had been repeatedly hit with a long, sharp object like a sword or machete. The police investigated the house and found a horrifying scene that looked like something out of a horror movie. Blood was everywhere, on the floor, on the walls, and even on the ceiling. Several police officers sought psychological help after witnessing the horrific scene. Investigators searched the entire house but found no perpetrator or any clues about the attacker. While investigating the murder, police found significant evidence outside the house. They saw bloody footprints on the sidewalk and suspected that the killer had left the scene in a vehicle. While searching for more clues, police found a blood-stained wolf mask on the front lawn. They believed the mask might have belonged to the killer, as family members said they had never owned it. The mask was sent to a lab for analysis. Police then spoke to Deanna, the only surviving child from the murder. She was in shock but still able to talk. She told police that after her father left for the store, someone knocked on their door. Her mother, Doreen, opened the door and saw a man wearing a wolf mask holding a knife. The attacker said, "I'm going to kill you now." Doreen screamed, telling her daughter to run away from the house immediately. Deanna hid behind the sofa, but could not remember what happened next. It was not until her father found her that Deanna calmed down. Unfortunately, Deanna was unable to provide any further information about the attacker as he had hidden his identity behind the wolf mask. Investigators initially suspected Doreen's husband, Charles, as the prime suspect. Since he had been out of the house around the time Doreen was attacked, they were suspicious of his trip to the store. When Charles returned, he had stepped in blood several times and even fallen, ending up covered in blood, but the police did not know whether he had done this on purpose to explain the blood stains on his clothes. However, detectives found several problems with this theory. First, Charles's shoes did not match the ones that left bloody footprints on the road. Second, there were no traces of blood found in Charles's car, nor were there any other shoe prints. To clarify the information, the police went to the store that Charles visited and confirmed the time he was there. The employee confirmed that Charles had bought candy at the store that evening. This indicated that he did not have enough time to commit the murder. Surveillance footage also confirmed that Charles was at the store. Therefore, the police no longer considered him the prime suspect. First, they asked Charles if he could think of anyone who might want to harm his family, and Charles immediately mentioned Doreen's ex-husband, Michael. Charles said that initially, Michael maintained a normal relationship with his ex-wife. However, things changed after the death of their son. Michael believed that Doreen had intentionally killed the child to cut off all contact with him. Michael even filed a civil lawsuit against her, but he lost the case. Doreen thought that there was a reason behind the change in Michael's behavior. He had a history of depression after the birth of his son and was distant from both his wife and child. All of this made Michael introverted and caused communication problems. These problems became one of the main reasons why Michael and Doreen decided to divorce. Later, when Doreen married Charles, Michael began to harbor resentment and hostility towards her. This became even more apparent when Michael began to truly hate his ex-wife. Later, Michael lost his job at the place where he had spent most of his life. This created many negative issues in his life. After hearing all this information, the detectives decided to go to Michael's house and talk to him. Although Charles's testimony was not enough to make Michael the prime suspect, since he lived only 2 miles from Doreen's house, they decided to visit him immediately. Around midnight, the police arrived at Michael's house and saw a pickup truck parked near the garage. When they shined a flashlight inside the car, they saw what appeared to be blood on the steering wheel and keys. They then knocked on Michael's door, but no one answered. The lights were on inside the house, and the police could hear water running inside, which made them suspect that Michael might be destroying evidence or washing bloody clothes. So they continued knocking. Michael finally opened the door. He remained calm even after being informed of his ex-wife's murder. Michael answered all the police's questions calmly and allowed them into his home without a warrant. According to him, he had gone to the store during the day, returned home, and had not left since. Michael even signed a form giving the police permission to search his home. As he reached for a pen to sign, the investigators noticed a deep cut on his right hand. Michael explained that he had accidentally cut himself earlier while carving pumpkins for Halloween. However, the police were skeptical. The wound was still fresh, and blood was still oozing from it. As several police officers began searching Michael's home, he was asked to go upstairs with an officer to show his identification. However, when he entered the bedroom, Michael's actions aroused suspicion as he appeared to be reaching under the bed. The officer asked him to move away and found a loaded gun holster under the headboard. After discovering the weapon, the police took Michael downstairs to meet with other officers. Their colleagues discovered other suspicious evidence. They found drops of blood on the floor, which led them to the garage, where there was a washing machine and bloody clothing. Based on this evidence, the police had enough to arrest Michael. Detectives and forensic experts investigated Michael's home, looking for more evidence that could connect him to the murder. Police are awaiting the results of blood analysis and have discovered other grisly signs. Initially, the police discovered an empty box containing an 18-inch machete. Medical experts determined that the shape of the knife matched the wound on Doreen's body perfectly. In addition, the police found 2 makeshift coffins in Michael's home, raising suspicions that they might be for Doreen and Charles. They also found mortuary bags, the type typically used by paramedics, in Michael's home. The presence of these items made the police question Michael's innocence. After compiling all this evidence, the police decided to apply for a warrant for Michael's arrest. Without a warrant, they could only detain him for a limited time. However, the judge said that the evidence they had gathered was not strong enough, and that there were many unknowns. As a result, Michael was released, and he was freed. 3 days into the investigation, detectives received lab results. The results showed that there were 2 different blood types at the crime scene. The majority of the blood matched Doreen's blood type, while a small amount matched Michael's. This indicated that Michael had injured himself during the attack on his ex-wife. The judge quickly issued an arrest warrant, and Michael was charged with the murder of his ex-wife and her unborn child. Detectives continued their investigation and found additional evidence linking Michael to the crime. When they spoke to acquaintances of Michael, they learned that he owned the wolf mask found near Doreen's house. They also found a photo of Michael wearing the mask at a previous Halloween party. To further solidify the case, police found the mask Michael wore in the photo in his home. Michael's trial began in July 1988, for years after Doreen's murder. He initially admitted to the crime, but later changed his story. He did not deny the murder, but claimed he was innocent by reason of mental illness. A psychologist assigned to monitor him concluded that he did have serious mental illness. According to Michael, he became insane on Halloween night when he saw other children trick-or-treating. This reminded him of Paul's death and caused him to collapse. He said that he went to Doreen's house that night with a machete. When she opened the door, he said, "You killed my son," and that he intended to kill her. She immediately recognized the man behind the mask, shouted at her daughter to run, and the next second, Michael attacked her. However, Michael's story had one twist. He said he did not know Doreen was pregnant. This raised suspicions as all her friends claimed that she was clearly pregnant before the tragedy. They even joked that Doreen had become even bigger because of her pregnancy. The murder of Doreen and her unborn child came to light at a trial. The prosecution argued that was fully aware of his actions and had planned to kill his ex-wife and her husband. He had told his friends about this desire, and detectives found evidence that he had made elaborate preparations, including 2 coffins and body bags, in his home. However, it appears that he changed his mind and did not carry out his murder plan. This led the prosecution to suspect that he may have feared being caught or discovered. One of the key witnesses in the case was Doreen's daughter, Deanna. She was only 9 years old at the time and still remembers what happened. After a year of investigation and trial, Michael was convicted of murder. He was sentenced to death, but before his execution, the state of California imposed a moratorium on executions. Therefore, Michael remains in custody, and his sentence may not be carried out anytime soon. The case left a deep mark on Deanna's life. Years later, she was still haunted by the horrific memories of her mother's death. However, she decided to forgive Michael and try to forget the past. Case 4. The case of Ryan Widmer. Sarah and Ryan Widmer met at a favorite coffee shop. Ryan ordered a cup of coffee while Sarah was waiting in line and happened to see a book on his table that she had just finished reading. Their shared interest in literature opened up their first conversation. Gradually, they spent many hours discussing common topics such as books, movies, music, and daily routines. Through the conversation, they discovered that they both loved nature, travel, and animals. After each meeting, their relationship became closer and more trusting of each other. Their understanding and trust grew more and more. Finally, their relationship developed into love. After a few months of dating, Ryan proposed to Sarah at a romantic sunset at the same coffee shop where they met. Sarah felt very happy and agreed to the proposal. The young couple planned their wedding and found a 2-story house in Hamilton. Finally, on April 10, 2008, their wedding took place. They chose a small church to hold the wedding ceremony with the participation of close friends and beloved family. Everything, even the smallest details, was planned by Sarah in a special way. On the important day, Sarah looked gorgeous and beautiful, and Ryan couldn't take his eyes off her. After the wedding and the party, The couple decided to go on a honeymoon to the Hawaiian Islands, where they spent 2 weeks exploring the beautiful paradise and enjoying time together. At this time, they were deeply in love and had already planned for the future, dreaming of having children. On the evening of Monday, August 11, 2008, after finishing work at the dental clinic, Sarah met Ryan at a cafe. They had dinner and talked happily. After that, they walked home. Sarah packed her groceries and sat down on the couch. Ryan brought her a glass of water and a headache pill. He gave her a bath, and they finished watching their favorite TV show together. Sarah went upstairs to the bedroom. She undressed, folded her clothes neatly, prepared a towel, lit a scented candle, and turned on her favorite music. Ryan pressed the button on the TV remote, pausing a few times on the football game. He lay on the couch for no more than 10 minutes. He called his wife, but Sarah didn't hear him, so he slowly went upstairs. In the bedroom, Ryan turned on the TV and called Sarah again. There was silence. In a panic, he went into the bathroom, where he found Sarah lying face down in the bathtub. Ryan unplugged the bathtub and took out his phone to call 911. At 10:49 p.m., under the direction of the police, Ryan finally got Sarah out of the bathtub and performed CPR on her. Within 6 minutes, an ambulance and police were at Ryan's home. An initial inspection of the scene caught the attention of the police. The bathroom was dry and clean, with no signs of water or scattered objects. Sarah was lying on the bedroom floor, naked, her skin dry. Only her wet hair suggested she had drowned. A paramedic performed CPR when there was no pulse. A pinkish-white fluid flowed from Sarah's nose and mouth. 2 attempts to intubate Sarah while she was lying on the bedroom floor were unsuccessful. Sarah was then rushed to the emergency room, and 2 more attempts were made to bring her heart rate back to normal with a defibrillator, both unsuccessful. During this time, Ryan remained by his wife's side. Within 20 minutes of arriving at the hospital, they attempted to revive Sarah, but at 11:41 p.m., an emergency room doctor pronounced her dead. Ryan knelt in the hospital hallway and cried. Relatives and friends of the couple could not have imagined that just 4 months after their wedding, a tragedy would strike that would shock the entire city and make Ryan the prime suspect in Sarah's death. When the police questioned him at the hospital, Ryan's initial statements raised suspicions. Ryan claimed that he and his wife had been home that night. They had dined out, returned home, and watched TV. Then, because his wife had a headache, Ryan gave her painkillers and led her to the bathroom. Some details in Ryan's statement did not match the emergency call records. The victim had collapsed face down while Ryan said his wife was lying face up. This discrepancy made the police question Ryan's statement. Ryan was deeply shocked by what had happened. He kept calling Sarah's name. Under pressure from the police, Ryan was forced to participate in the investigation to find out information about Sarah's death. He agreed to allow his house to be searched. Analysis of the medication Sarah had taken showed that it was a common painkiller commonly used to treat headaches and migraines. However, she had been taking a course of medication that altered her hormones and caused her to fall into an uncontrollable sleep. After searching the house, traces of blood were found on the carpet. During the investigation, the police discovered several signs that made them suspicious of Ryan's story. When they arrived at the scene, the bathtub and tiles were dry with no signs of water. No wet items, clothing, or other items were found in the house that could have soaked up the water. The autopsy revealed that Sarah had several injuries to her body, including bruises to her head, neck, armpits, and lips. However, there were no signs of a struggle or resistance. Sarah's fingernails were intact, not broken or chipped. This does not fit the theory that Sarah was murdered after a struggle. Sarah's autopsy, conducted by Dr. Russell Appointment Grove, showed that she died of drowning. During the autopsy, experts also discovered multiple muscle hemorrhages in the front of her neck and bruises on her head. These injuries were determined to have occurred before her death. However, the cause of these injuries is still unknown. Toxicology tests ruled out the presence of illegal substances or alcohol in Sarah's blood. This makes the question of what caused her death even more difficult to answer. On August 13, 2008, Ryan was arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife. The charge was based on the emergency call, a scene that did not match the reality, and the injuries on Sarah's body. This was enough to charge him with murdering his wife. Ryan and Sarah were very much in love, as friends and neighbors confirmed. They never argued or fought in public and always planned their lives. What caused Sarah's death? In March 2009, The first trial began with emergency line officer Ron Cronenberger taking the stand. He described the phone conversation with Ryan as calm and relaxed. However, Ron Cronenberger also said that Ryan appeared to be just blowing into the tube, pretending to perform CPR. The prosecution argued that the information from the 911 call, the scene, and Sarah's injuries were enough to prove that Ryan killed her by forcing her underwater and drowning her in the bathtub. The main piece of evidence in the case was the bathtub. Police examined the bathtub for fingerprints and found what they believed to be human handprints. These were located closer to the middle of the bathtub. Using a reflective ultraviolet photographic process, fingerprints and stains were found on the bathtub. A fingerprint was found on the forearm, and hair follicle testing determined that it was left by an adult male, but the age of the fingerprint could not be determined. The police called in a medical expert, who testified that falling asleep and dying in a bathtub was unlikely unless illegal drugs or alcohol were involved. According to the expert, the sensation of water on the face could have awakened the person or triggered a reflex response to the airway. Otherwise, the reduction in oxygen in the muscles would have likely awakened the victim. In addition, the pathologist who performed the autopsy was called to testify. He stated that if Sarah had a dry body and wet hair, a likely explanation would be that her head had been pushed off the edge of the bathtub, toilet, or sink. She could have been pushed forward or backward, in running water or in a full bathtub. According to the prosecution's case, Ryan held Sarah's head underwater until she drowned, and on that basis, he should be convicted. Ryan's defense attorney argued that he was innocent, and that he had no motive to kill Sarah. The attorney said that if there had been a violent struggle, as the prosecution argued, there would have been evidence of that. However, there were no injuries on Ryan, and Sarah's fingernails were not broken or chipped. The attorney said that the injuries found on Sarah were the result of prolonged CPR, direct cardiac massage, and multiple attempts at intubation that night in the house, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and at the hospital itself. At the defense's request, a second autopsy was performed. Dr. Werner Spitz performed a second autopsy, and again confirmed that the cause of death was drowning. He observed injuries to her neck, arms, upper lip, skull, a lacerated liver, and bleeding from her neck, but could not determine whether these injuries were due to CPR. Those present argued that the paramedics had been trying to resuscitate Sarah for about 45 minutes, and that the deep bleeding inside Sarah's neck could have been caused by N4 being inserted into the area, because paramedics could not reach the veins in her arms. Instead of ruling it a homicide, Dr. Werner Spitz ruled Sarah's death undetermined. The defense said her skin was dry because it dries faster than her hair. They also said that when Ryan found his wife unconscious, he pushed the drain in the bathtub, tried to help her, and called emergency services. This chain of events explains why her body was drier than expected. The water had drained out of the bathtub even before Ryan called 911. However, it is not yet known whether the jury's verdict would have changed if they had received credible evidence that Sarah's medical condition could have caused the drowning. The official reason for denying a new trial was that the jury had made errors in its investigation. Ryan was surprised when Jennifer Cruz came to the prosecutor's office to testify about Ryan's guilt. She said she was friends with Ryan, and that he had been in regular contact with her by phone or email. According to Jennifer's testimony, he called on October 26, 2009, at 11:09 p.m. In a very upset voice, he told her that he had beaten Sarah in the living room on the day of her death. Sarah had discovered his infidelity and had seen inappropriate photos. They had argued for a long time, first downstairs and then in the bedroom. Ryan pushed her into the bathroom and left his wife there without checking to see what had happened to her. He was angry, and after calming down, he found Sarah floating in a bathtub full of water. To cover his tracks, he wiped up the water on the bathroom floor with a towel and came up with a plan for the accident. Ryan's attorneys worked hard to prove his innocence. They tried to throw out Jennifer's testimony because they thought it was unreasonable. One obvious example was that no towels were found in the house, including the dryer, and there was no evidence of infidelity in their marriage. The family had no financial problems and never argued. Ryan was described by friends as a kind and helpful person who never showed anger. Ryan would not benefit from his wife's death because he did not have a life insurance policy. Before the third trial began, Jennifer was discredited and barred from testifying. The call that Ryan allegedly confessed to her was not authenticated. In January 2011, a trial was held based on new evidence. The defense argued that Sarah had underlying medical conditions that could have caused her to suddenly lose consciousness and drown. Several medical experts testified in support of the defense, stating that some heart or neurological defect could have led to the loss of consciousness. However, the state's medical experts disagreed with this assessment. The trial also revealed additional details about Sarah's health and daily routine. Her co-workers testified that she often slept in her car before going to work at the dental office due to severe allergies and stomach aches. On the day of her death, Sarah had complained of headaches and stomach aches to her dentist boss. That evening, Sarah talked to a friend and mentioned her headaches and neck pain, and her friend said she looked extremely tired. Her ability to fall asleep quickly led her friends to think she might have narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness. People with narcolepsy often have difficulty staying awake and need to take frequent naps to cope. However, Sarah's mother, Ruth N. Stward, disputed this idea when she testified as a prosecution witness at trial. She claimed that she had never seen her daughter have sleep problems and described Sarah as a healthy and active child with a regular daily routine. Sarah's medical records also supported this claim. As a dental hygienist, Sarah had undergone regular checkups, and her last checkup showed no signs of health problems. In addition, other witnesses who claimed Sarah was excessively sleepy gave unconvincing testimony. In cases where a person tries to strangle another from behind, the victim often suffers defensive injuries to the arms and legs, as well as injuries to the small bones in the neck. However, Sarah's autopsy did not show any such injuries. The defense urged the jury to consider all the facts surrounding the case, that Ryan had no reason to harm Sarah. Once again, the defense was defeated. After about 12 hours of deliberations, Ryan was convicted of murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The jury based their decision on the lack of water on Sarah's body and around the bathtub, and that Ryan's call to 911 was staged. One juror felt that Ryan's demeanor in court was one of the main reasons he believed Ryan was guilty. When the autopsy photos were shown, they felt that Ryan was completely unresponsive. Ryan did not take a stand, although he told the court after the verdict was announced he loved his wife. He did not hurt her. Ryan remains in custody, awaiting a federal court ruling that could determine his parole status. After 14 years in prison, his first chance for parole will be in July 2025. With each passing year, Ryan holds out hope that the next year will bring him freedom. He continues to maintain his innocence and profess his love for Sarah, insisting that he did not harm her. Ryan's chances of parole in 2025 appear slim, as the parole board tends to favor inmates who show remorse. Since Ryan has always maintained his innocence, he could face an uphill battle for parole. Case 5. The case of Angela Wilder. Angela Wilder was born in 1985 in San Diego, California, USA, as the youngest daughter in her family. She had an older sister named Cree, and they were very close. Both of her parents were in the military, so the family often moved. This often leads to tension within their families. Eventually, Angela's parents decided to divorce while she was still in school. Angela's mother met someone new, and they moved with him to Phoenix City, Alabama, a small town with a population of 40,000. After the move, her mother left the military. The family became regular attendees of the local church, as they had always been religious. In high school, Angela met Christopher Jackson, and they quickly developed feelings for each other. They began dating, marking Angela's first love. However, the relationship was short-lived because Angela prioritized her education. She needed to move to attend the University of South Alabama. Christopher found the breakup difficult as he genuinely loved Angela, but he didn't want to stand in the way of her dreams. In 2004, Angela met a preacher's son named Daniel. At that time, she was still in university, but quickly became involved in a relationship with him. Before long, Angela became pregnant, and the couple decided to marry. They had a wedding and soon welcomed a daughter. However, financial struggles and work stress took a toll on their relationship. Angela's feelings for Daniel faded quickly, and she realized he wasn't the partner she wanted for life. After 2 years of marriage, Angela decided to file for divorce and seek full custody of their daughter. After graduating from university, Angela returned to her hometown and lived in her parents' house. Her mother and sister supported her by helping take care of her daughter. During one visit to the local church, she met Richie Wilder, a former schoolmate. Richie has a hot temper and often causes trouble, Many people believe that the reason is because he was raised in an unhappy family. His father was an alcoholic who often mistreated his mother, who couldn't do anything about it. While many people avoided Richie, Angela believed she saw a different side of him and thought she could bring out his best qualities. Richie and Angela formed a close relationship, and they started dating. Angela mentioned that Richie got along well with her daughter and treated her kindly. However, Angela's relatives quickly observed negative changes in her behavior at the start of her relationship with Richie. They noticed that Angela became quieter, more difficult to understand, and more stressed. Despite everyone's worry and advice to keep her distance from him, but Angela did not heed their warnings. In January 2009, Richie and Angela got married. Richie took Angela and her daughter to the family home, and they moved to the city of Minot, North Dakota. It's a small town with about 40,000 people, a very tight-knit local community, and includes armed forces facilities. There is also a military base where Richie was stationed. In 2010, Angela found out she was pregnant. During that time, she started working at a supply store on the military base. Some people close to Richie and Angela noticed issues in their relationship. Angela's coworkers noticed that Richie was often rude and aggressive towards her. He often insults Angela and makes her cry, even though she is very vulnerable. She later revealed that he was not only cruel to her, but also to her daughter. It was discovered that he regularly abused the whole family, but did so without leaving any marks. This abuse continued for years. The couple had 2 children, a boy and a girl. When Angela reached her breaking point, she officially reported the violence to the police. When the investigation started, all of Richie's colleagues and the military base management supported him. He convinced people that his wife, Angela, was unstable and had mental health issues. Angela lacked solid evidence of her husband's mistreatment, and the backing Richie received from the military base management helped cover up the case. Despite this, Angela was determined to end the relationship while keeping custody of their children. While trying to prove Richie was cruel, Angela herself faced accusations from him. Richie alleged that Angela had anger management issues, and he proved it thanks to support of his colleagues. Ultimately, Angela, a mother of 2, was referred to an anger management specialist and prescribed sedatives. Friends familiar with Angela insisted she never had such issues and no one had seen her act aggressively. They believed Richie orchestrated the situation to discredit her with the authorities. However, Angela still followed the treatment regimen with the aim of understanding and dealing with her condition. Around 2 weeks after, Richie and Angela reconciled, but peace in their relationship was short-lived. Angela soon filed for divorce, and their marriage ended in May 2012. Richie faced a military tribunal. Despite opposition from the officers at the military base, Angela succeeded in proving the violence against her and the children. Due to uncovered family issues and deceit, Richie was dismissed from service. Angela did not want to share custody and planned to move with the children back to Alabama. This decision angered Richie. He wanted to maintain a relationship with the children, visit them regularly, and have them over on weekends. This disagreement led to arguments between the ex-spouses. Richie consistently opposed the idea and even threatened Angela. During the World Cup, Angela confided her plan to her loved ones, and despite opposition, she went through with her decision and moved to another state. Besides, Richie also relocated to a nearby city within the state and began working as a junior staff member at a hospital. In this new city, he met Cynthia Becker, a kindergarten teacher. They began dating, and their relationship quickly progressed. Eventually, they got married and started a family. Despite this, Richie remained troubled by the custody arrangement of his children, as his ex-wife, Angela, had been granted full custody. He maintained contact with his son and daughter primarily through phone calls, but the disputes between them persisted. Despite everything that happened, Angela seemed genuinely happy. She had started dating Christopher Jackson again, her first boyfriend from high school. Previously, they had broken up so she could pursue her education. After many years of separation, the love between them burned stronger than ever. Angela told her family that she had finally found someone with whom she felt warmth, and they had a son. Angela and Christopher were planning their wedding, and she was pregnant again. She had no idea she would soon have to fight for her life. On the evening of November 13, 2015, Christopher went to work for his night shift at a local 24-hour Walmart. He didn't have a car, so Angela usually picked him up after his shift at 7 a.m. However, on that night, Angela stopped responding to his calls and messages. They typically stayed in touch during his shifts. But communication ended around 3 a.m. when Angela texted that she heard a noise outside and felt she was being followed. Christopher only saw the message 2 hours later because he was busy with work. Concerned, he tried calling Angela, but she didn't answer. He assumed she might have fallen asleep or gone to a clinic in the morning for pregnancy tests. But when Angela didn't arrive to pick him up as planned, Christopher began to worry then. At the time, Angela was enrolled in a nursing program at Minot University and had recently discovered she was pregnant again. Christopher thought she might have gone to the hospital if she felt unwell or if their son was sick, which might explain why she wasn't responding to his calls and messages. Even though he understood her possible situation, the strangeness didn't stop there. Normally, she would immediately call Christopher in such a case. If he didn't answer, she will at least send a text message to inform him of any problems. So, he was confused about why Angela suddenly stopped all communication, which was not like her. Christopher kept calling, but his calls always went to voicemail. Too worried, he rushed back home. Then he knocked on the bedroom window where Angela might be sleeping. However, when he saw the back door, he realized something terrible might have happened that night. There were signs of a break-in, as if the door had been forcefully knocked down. Christopher looked inside and called Angela's name several times, but there was no response. He didn't enter the house, fearing something bad might be inside. Instead, he immediately called 911 to report the situation. He explained that Angela hadn't answered his phone for several hours and didn't pick him up from work as usual. He asked the dispatcher if he could go inside to find out what happened, but the dispatcher advised against it, suggesting there might be a criminal inside waiting for another victim. Christopher was instructed to wait outside for the police. He urged them to hurry because Angela was pregnant, and he was concerned for her and their unborn child's safety. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. During this time, Christopher waited outside for them. He could only enter the house once they arrived. From the outside, everything appeared normal, the furniture was in place, and everything was clean and tidy. However, Angela still did not respond to his calls. When the officers approached the main bedroom and opened the door, the reason for Angela's silence became clear. One officer turned on the light and discovered a horrifying scene. There was so much blood that the bed linen items were all mixed into a red mess. On the bed lay 30-year-old Angela, showing no signs of life. She was stabbed multiple times. During the attack, Angela's 2-year-old son was in the house. He remained silent, and no sounds came from his room. Christopher, alarmed, rushed to check on him, but thankfully he was just sleeping and unharmed, as he was not the killer's target. The other children were with their grandmother that day. Christopher immediately accused Richie of being the one who killed Angela, having no other suspects for who could have harmed Angela so brutally. She had no other enemies. After marrying Richie, Angela had a daughter and a son, who were 10 and 4 years old at the time of the tragedy. Although the judge awarded Angela full custody, but Richie had visitation rights and to be involved in their children's lives. Richie took the kids away for the weekend and intended to contest custody so they could live with him forever. Angela opposed this due to his cruel nature, leading to constant arguments between them. Later, there is evidence that Richie may have been involved in the murder of his ex-wife, Angela. For example, Crystal, Angela's sister, informed the police that Richie had aggressively entered Angela's house after their divorce and said that if he wanted, he could reach her. However, Richie never used physical force in public, so these claims remained unproven. The forensic expert concluded that by the time Angela was found, she had been killed with over 1,000 stab wounds. She had fought desperately against the attack, as evidenced by the cuts on her hands, likely from trying to defend herself. The police quickly observed that valuables in the house were still intact, indicating that the attacker was not motivated by theft, but by a desire to kill Angela. Investigating her personal life, the police noted that Angela and Richie had a hostile relationship and were frequently in conflict. Richie had been discharged from military service for violence against Angela and their children. Relatives of Angela confirmed that the relationship between her and Richie was very strained. Angela avoided interacting with Richie when he came to pick up the children, so Christopher usually handled the exchanges. Christopher detailed the issues between Angela and Richie, expressing his dislike for Richie's aggressive behavior, although he managed to avoid direct conflicts with him. After gathering all the information, the detectives focused on Richie, who became the main suspect. Richie agreed to speak with them and firmly denied any involvement in the incident. Since the evidence collected had not yet been analyzed, they had nothing to confront him with. so they continued questioning him. Richie provided an alibi, stating that he left work around 7 p.m. and went home. His new wife, Cynthia, confirmed that Richie was with her at home the entire night. However, the investigators noticed several wounds on Richie's hands and face that resembled scratches, which could be defensive wounds inflicted by Angela during a struggle. Richie claimed these injuries were from playing with a child. The detectives doubted his explanation and decided to review CCTV footage from the area, requesting the recordings. After reviewing the footage from the cameras that might have captured the criminal arriving to commit the murder, Richie's car was not seen. However, this didn't mean much as the attacker could have gone unnoticed. The police collected DNA samples from Richie for testing and obtained a warrant to search his car. The car's interior was extremely clean, except for a small red stain on the front passenger seat door. Forensic experts collected these materials for examination. Suspicions about Richie increased. He was asked to take a polygraph test. Although a polygraph is not admissible in court, detectives wanted to observe his reaction and behavior during the test. Initially, Richie agreed, but he never showed up for it. Despite his refusal, this was insufficient to arrest him or press charges, so investigators decided to look into his background more thoroughly. All the employees at the hospital where Richie works were aware of the investigation. Despite this, he was fired a few weeks after the investigation started. A complaint was filed against him for pushing an elderly patient. Richie later justified his actions by claiming nervous tension caused by pressure from police officers. Meanwhile, detectives were gathering more evidence of Richie's involvement in Angela's murder. DNA traces were found that matched samples from the suspected killer, Richie, suggesting that he was the one Angela had fought off in her bedroom. Richie declared that maybe the recently time he picked up the kids, he accidentally left a trace of DNA there. However, this explanation seemed implausible since the last meeting was with Christopher, and he and Angela had no contact with each other. The examination confirmed that the drop of blood in Richie's car belonged to Angela's. Richie claimed it might have been from when they were still together, as Angela allegedly had blood pressure issues and occasionally had nosebleeds. However, the blood appeared very fresh. His explanation seemed like attempts to mislead the investigation, revealed many contradictions in his testimony. The police finally arrested Richie for Angela's murder, but he denied all the charges. In March, the police received an unexpected confession from Richie. He mentioned that he had no criminal record and a good background, claiming he wasn't guilty of the crime. However, he was willing to talk about who was actually involved in Angela's death. According to him, during one of their meetings, Christopher proposed an unusual deal. Richie recounted that Christopher suspected Angela of cheating and was convinced she was seeing her lover while he worked night shifts. Christopher suggested catching Angela in the act, which would also give Richie leverage in a custody battle for the children. Richie agreed, and that evening, he called Christopher to pick him up from work. Richie explained that he and Christopher went to Angela's house to confront her and her lover. When they entered the bedroom, they only found Angela, who was sleeping peacefully. Despite this, Christopher unexpectedly drew a knife they had brought for self-defense and attacked her, stabbing her multiple times. Angela woke up and tried to defend herself, but she couldn't. Richie confessed that he was in shock, but he unable to help her. Richie watched the attack, but was too stunned and unable to intervene. Afterward, Christopher warned him not to tell anyone, threatening to kill him if he did. Once Richie regained his senses, he checked Angela's pulse by touching her neck. Suddenly, Angela made a final attempt to fight back, grabbing him with her hands and scratching him before collapsing once more. Terrified by Christopher's warning, fled the scene, and remained silent until the situation directly affected him. Richie said he did not tell this story during his first meeting with the police because he was scared. He stated that Christopher kept threatening him and his family, but no one believed this claim Richie's. The police reviewed the store's surveillance footage and confirmed that Christopher was working the night shift during Angela's death. He was on Marta Street, visible to cameras from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., and couldn't leave his job. Moreover, Christopher confirmed that he took a taxi home in the morning, and this information was recorded on his mobile phone. Once Richie realized how absurd his story sounded, he began telling more incredible tales. He finally claimed to have witnessed Angela being murdered by a killer wearing a black mask, allegedly hired by an enemy of Angela. He even tried to accuse some of his fellow inmates of attacking Angela, but he couldn't clearly explain the incident of that night. He claimed the killers were overwhelmed with guilt and confessed to him during a private conversation. However, all of this turned out to be fabricated. It was revealed that Richie even paid $500,000 to a prisoner to plead guilty on his behalf. When no one agreed to take the blame, Richie attempted to pay a similar amount to arrange for the murder of Christopher to keep him silent. Fortunately, his fellow inmate ignored this offer. One night, while Richie was in custody awaiting trial, correctional officers noticed him acting suspiciously. After searching his cell, they found a broom handle sharpened on one end like a spear. It was clear he was planning an escape and had made a weapon for this purpose. Fortunately, the plan was discovered in time, and the guards began to watch him more closely. As a result, he was never able to carry out any of his plans. Richie's behavior in prison was considered during his trial, and in addition to the murder charges, he faced punishment for attempting to escape. The trial for Angela Wilder's murder began in December 2016. Despite having enough evidence to convict Richie, forensic experts presented the accusations. Angela's body was found on the morning of November 14, 2015. She was lying face up on the bed, covered in blood. A drop of blood found in Richie's car matched the DNA of Angela. Additionally, DNA under her fingernails matched Richie's, providing irrefutable evidence of his guilt. Although Richie's lawyer tried his best to defend his client, the case documents provided by the prosecutor's office were too convincing. Consequently, the jury found Richie Wilder guilty of premeditated murder. A woman who knew Richie well insisted from the start that the police had made a mistake. She argued that they only focused on Richie due to past conflicts, overlooking other possibilities. She maintained that Richie couldn't be guilty because he had spent the night with her from November 13th to 14th. She believes that he is a trustworthy person who loves children and does not commit domestic violence. However, evidence clearly confirmed his guilt. Richie Wilder received a life sentence in prison without the chance of parole and an extra 5 years for trying to escape. Overnight, Angela's children lost both parents. Richie's new wife, Cynthia, who had hoped for a happy family, could no longer be with her husband. After the trial, Cynthia expressed her disbelief, considering it an injustice. She insisted that Richie was wrongly framed and imprisoned. The case might have ended there, but a friend of Cynthia's kept an eye out. Cynthia frequently talked to this friend after Richie was imprisoned, often steering the conversation towards Angela's murder and the situation. During one discussion, Cynthia mentioned that Angela was supposed to be shot with a gun her husband had, but he changed his mind and used a knife instead. This raised suspicions for Cynthia's friend. It seemed that Cynthia felt no pity at all, and at the same time she knew more than she was letting on about the murder. The police asked this friend of Cynthia's to let them wiretap his chat meeting next with Cynthia, and he agreed. Later, during a heartfelt conversation, he asked why Cynthia was so upset about the crime involving Angela. She clarified that it wasn't the crime itself that bothered her, but the fact that Richie was caught and imprisoned. Cynthia expressed frustration that Richie should have taken more drastic actions like cutting off Angela's fingers, burning down her house, or destroying all evidence to avoid arrest. Cynthia was also angry about a drop of blood the police found inside Richie's car. She confessed that they had worked together to clean up the traces. Cynthia often discusses the importance of committing crimes perfectly, so as to never get caught by the police. Cynthia admitted that they had been planned by both she and Richie for a long time. Richie did not want to share custody of the children with Angela's and saw the crime as the only solution. Cynthia helped him plan it, but did not participate in the attack itself. Later, this recording was given to the police. Cynthia was arrested in 2018, and the trial began. She claimed that everything on the recording was a lie and that she was set up. According to Angela, she wanted to impress a friend because she hoped to start a relationship with him, so she thought this story would make a strong impression. Law enforcement officials stated that Cynthia was the only person who knew the situation had the ability to prevent the murder, but she chose not to act. The prosecutor's office offered Cynthia a plea deal for a reduced sentence of 25 years, which she declined. She believed she could avoid responsibility due to the lack of evidence apart from a confession. She maintained her innocence regarding. However, a recording revealed that Cynthia actively participated in planning and preparing for the massacre. She also assisted in disposing of evidence, overseeing the murder, and even attempted to help Richie escape from prison in 2016. Authorities documented these activities and planned to file new charges against her. Cynthia was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and attempting to escape, resulting in a life sentence without parole, similar to Richie, who was already serving a sentence. Both Richie and Cynthia appealed their convictions, but their appeals were denied. After the trials, Angela's mother became the legal guardian of the children. The children moved to Jacksonville, Florida, to live with her in September 2017. The court initially ruled that Richie could not have contact with his children. However, this decision was later revised, allowing the children to decide on contact once they reach adulthood. Case 6. Diana Maria Kier Lopez Pinal was born on August 12, 1998, in Madrid, to parents Diana Cristina Lopez Pinal and Juan Carlo Kier. She has a younger sister named Valeria. Her family was wealthy, and everyone in the family was very close-knit. But their lives hit a snag in 2013 when Diana's parents divorced. However, the father still visits his daughter regularly on holidays. In the summer of 2016, Diana, her mother, and her younger sister spent their vacation in the small coastal town of Apab du Caramal, a place they had visited many times before. The town, with a population of around 10,000, is a quiet and picturesque retreat away from the hustle and bustle of city life. On the evening of August 21st, Diana told her mother that she was going to meet her friends at Valenclin Park to celebrate the Feast of the Virgin Carmen. The park was close to their vacation cottage, and Diana often walked there. Her mother gave her permission to go. Diana spent a fun evening with her friends, she unaware that it would be the last time they would see each other. At around 2:30 a.m., she said goodbye to her friends and began her home. On the way, she ran into a friend, Paso D. Ariel, near her favorite pizzeria. He was the last person to see Diana that night. The next morning, August 22nd, 2016, became a nightmare for Diana's mother, Christina. When she realized her daughter hadn't come home from the party, she grew concerned. Diana's phone was off, which only added to her worry. Without hesitation, Christina contacted the police and reported her daughter missing. According to Christina, Diana didn't have any serious emotional or mental health issues, despite her parents' divorce when she was younger. Police opened an investigation into Diana's disappearance, looking into the mysterious circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Diana's disappearance is a mystery that investigators must unravel. Their first clue came from the last message she sent to a friend in Madrid via WhatsApp. In these messages, Diana mentioned a stranger who was stalking her and shouting strange phrases, causing her to feel scared. Unfortunately, these were her last messages, after which she stopped replying to her friend's messages. During their search, they found a black hair band along the road that resembled the one Diana was wearing that night. Although this was the only evidence found at the scene of her disappearance, it gave investigators a clue to work with. Diana's friends had no information about her disappearance. Additionally, there were no CCTV cameras in the area where she was last seen. The street was dimly lit and deserted, with only a few garages and an old nightclub. Although some people reported seeing Diana get out of a car with 3 men and then get into another car, but these were not corroborated. The investigation into Diana's disappearance considered 2 primary theories. One possibility was that she was kidnapped by someone she knew. The other theory is that she was the victim of a random attack by a mentally unstable individual. Diana's mother proposed a third theory, speculating that her daughter might have been taken away by boat. New information emerged when Diana's friend and ex-boyfriend revealed that she had met a man from Morocco and purchased hashish with him. However, this detail only added to the complexity of the case. The media reported that the clothes Diana wore on the evening of her disappearance had been found, but her mother disputed it, saying it was not true. Several factors suggest that Diana did not leave voluntarily. Her credit cards and identification were still in the house. It suggests Diana's disappearance was forced, but the case remains unsolved and remains a mystery. After Diana vanished, the media reported on a fight between Diana and her mother that had occurred just days before. The press claimed that Diana had a nervous breakdown and needed medical attention. Her sister Valeria was also hospitalized with similar symptoms. To avoid conflict, the court awarded custody of Valeria to her father. The decision was made as a precaution, due to the stress of Diana's disappearance. The father and Valeria left town, sparking rumors that the family was hiding something. Diana's friends revealed that running away from home was not unusual for her sisters, especially 16 years old Valeria. The family dynamics were complex, and arguments between the mother and daughters were common. This information raises a question: If Diana regularly left the house without any problems, why was her mother so worried this time? On August 31st, Diana's parents failed to appear for a press conference, where they were expected to provide an update on the investigation into their daughter's disappearance. According to the family's lawyer, her parents were too distraught to attend, as they were struggling to accept the possibility of never seeing Diana again. An article published in El Mundo on September 11th revealed new information about the family's situation. Contrary to the mother's claims that Diana did not have mental health issues, it was reported that Diana had previously gone missing for 3 days in April. During this time, she had turned off her phone and told her mother that she no longer wanted to live with her. The mother had not contacted the police, which raised concerns about her response to her daughter's behavior. Letters exchanged between Diana and her younger sister Valeria were also made public, shedding light on the emotional struggles both girls were facing. Valeria had been hospitalized multiple times in the past year, including one instance where she had to have her stomach pumped due to an overdose of prescription medication. Prosecutors have launched a new investigation into the alleged abuse of Valeria, the youngest daughter of the family, due to the lack of progress in the case of Diana's disappearance. The investigation into Diana's disappearance is currently in progress and is moving forward quickly. Forensic experts have analyzed several items belonging to Diana, including her toothbrush, comb, computer, diary, and prescription medication. Investigators have also questioned her acquaintances, including a young Moroccan man she had a brief relationship with. Unfortunately, these efforts yielded no results and police searches remained unsuccessful. The police have conducted extensive searches in the surrounding mountains, forests, rivers, and lakes. However, it appears that Diana disappeared at around 3 a.m., and the last signal from her phone was detected in the Tarragon area, 13 miles from her family's location. 72 days after her disappearance, Diana's case remains unresolved. However, police have found a hairband and a cell phone matching the description of Diana's phone. Her father has confirmed that the phone belongs to his daughter. 2 months after Diana went missing, her Facebook profile suddenly became active again. Her friends and family quickly informed the police and provided screenshots. It appeared that the Remind Password feature had been used, allowing someone to access her account without knowing her login details. This led to 2 possible explanations. Either Diana had forgotten her password and was trying to regain access, or someone else was attempting to break into her account. Diana's phone was a key element in the case, but it did not provide any useful information that could help explain her disappearance. The investigation finally made progress on November 10, 2006, when the driver of the car in which Diana was last seen was identified. The driver had a history of being involved in human trafficking, but this information was kept confidential to avoid jeopardizing the investigation. Initially, he had an alibi for the night of Diana's disappearance, as his wife claimed he was with her, which temporarily cleared him as a suspect. On December 25, 2017, a new piece of information came to light that greatly helped the investigation. A girl was attacked by a man who demanded her phone and threatened her with a weapon. She screamed, and a passing couple intervened, saving her from the assailant who attempted to drag her into his car. The traumatized girl quickly contacted the police, providing a description of the attacker and his vehicle's license plate number. The next day, the police arrested 41-year-old Jose Enrique Abuengay, who had a previous criminal record. Significantly, Jose Enrique was the same individual who had been detained in 2016 on suspicion of kidnapping Diana, but was released due to an alibi provided by his wife. Police re-questioned Jose Enrique and his wife. Following the interrogation, the wife admitted that her initial alibi had been false, and in reality, Jose Enrique was away from their home on the night Diana disappeared and did not return until 4 a.m. Jose Enrique initially claimed that he had accidentally hit Diana with his car and, fearing discovery and imprisonment, he had dumped her body. However, he later changed his story, confessing to kidnapping and murdering her. According to Jose Enrique's new testimony, he went to the beach to look for gasoline from abandoned cars, and that's where he met Diana. The confession of Jose Enrique reveals shocking, disturbing information. He kidnapped Diana, attempted to force her into a sexual act, and ultimately strangled her. This shocking confession sheds light on the case, confirming that Diana's disappearance was a heinous crime. The disappearance of Diana Maria Caller Lopez Painel has been a traumatic and lengthy case for her family and those following her case. The investigation lasted 494 days and was heavily covered by the media, with many unfounded and damaging rumors about her parents, causing them great distress and making the investigation more difficult. Despite these challenges, investigators persisted and eventually gathered enough evidence to identify the perpetrator. Diana's loved ones remember her as a beautiful, energetic young woman whose short life was unfortunately ended after an encounter with a violent man. Although Jose Enrique initially withheld information about Diana's whereabouts, he eventually revealed the location of her body, allowing her family and friends to hold a proper burial in January 2018. Her body was discovered in the well of an abandoned warehouse. The perpetrator, Jose Enrique, was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 35 years. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Bobby and McLeod. Bobby Ann lived with her parents, Donna and Adrian, and her brother Lee in Plymouth, a lively coastal town in southwest England. On November 20th, 2021, Bobby Ann left her home around 5:45 p.m., heading to the bus stop on Sheepstore Road. She had told her father that she was going downtown to meet her boyfriend and friends, something she had done many times before. The bus stop was familiar to her, and she reached it within a few minutes. An hour and a half passed, and Bobby Ann's mother, Donna, sent her a text to check if she had arrived safely. When Bobby Ann didn't reply, Donna tried calling her, but her daughter also didn't answer. This was unusual, and Donna became worried. About an hour later, Bobby Ann's boyfriend called her parents, asking if she was at home. He was concerned because Bobby Ann hadn't shown up for their scheduled meeting, and he hadn't been able to reach her by phone. Bobby Ann's parents called all her friends, but none of them knew her whereabouts. With growing concern, they reported her missing to the police. It was already past 9 p.m. The next morning, November 21st, police along with McLeod's family and volunteers began a thorough search of the area. Flyers with Bobby Ann's picture were distributed across the city, and her disappearance was shared on social media and local news outlets. Bobby Ann's brother, Lee, made a desperate plea on social media, urging everyone in Plymouth to help search for her. He asked people to report any information or sightings to him. The police investigation revealed that Bobby Ann had planned to take a bus downtown, but she never boarded it. However, a local resident came forward, stating that he had seen Bobby Ann at the bus stop the previous evening. This new information confirms that Bobby Ann did indeed arrive at the bus stop, but did not get on the bus for unknown reasons. Further evidence was found when police discovered Bobby Ann's wireless headphones in the walkway behind the bus stop. The area was sealed off, and police officers conducted a meticulous search of the surrounding area, scouring every inch for potential clues. Evidence was collected along the girl's usual route from her home to the bus stop, as well as on surrounding streets. Since Bobby Ann was last seen at the bus stop but never boarded the bus, and her headphones were found nearby, authorities suspected she might have been kidnapped. Investigators attempted to locate her cell phone, which was detected within the city limits, but they couldn't pinpoint its exact location. All calls to her number went straight to voicemail. The police eventually found Bobby Ann's phone. On November 22nd, police, family members, and volunteers conducted a thorough search of the area surrounding Bobby Ann's home, but unfortunately, no leads were found. The following evening, November 23rd, the police announced the discovery of a woman's body at Bevazen Beach, approximately 8 miles from the bus stop where Bobby Ann was last seen. The body was found in a wooded area near the shore, about half a mile inland. The body found was indeed Bobby Ann's. Her death was a devastating blow to her loved ones. A vigil was held in her memory near the bus stop where she was last seen, and the family expressed their gratitude to everyone who attended. During the vigil, Bobby Ann's mother, Donna, sent heartfelt love to her daughter. On behalf of her family, she expressed gratitude to everyone for coming together during this difficult time. She admits that although their beautiful Bobby Ann's life was taken, she will always be remembered. Bobby Ann McLeod's brother, Lee McLeod, paid a heartfelt tribute to his sister by sharing a childhood photo of the two of them. The picture showed the siblings smiling and wearing their primary school uniforms. In a message accompanying the photo, Lee expressed his grief and love for his sister. He wrote, "You didn't deserve this. You were a beautiful and talented girl, and I'm grateful to have had you as my little sister. I'll always treasure the adventures and journeys we had. Rest easy now." The police investigation revealed that Bobby Ann's body was found naked, but the medical examiner found no evidence of rape. However, she had suffered severe head and facial injuries, including 14 lacerations. The investigation has made progress. A man who walked into the police station on November 23rd, the same day the body was found. At 1:17 p.m., he approached the police and offered to provide information about the missing girl, stating that he wanted to help the police and her family. That man was Cody Ackland, 24, admitted to the crime. He confessed to kidnapping and killing Bobby and providing details of the offense. Cody lived fairly close to the bus stop where Bobby was last seen, and he was taken into custody as the prime suspect. Cody confirmed that he had abducted Bobby from the bus stop, despite never having met her before the evening of the incident. Cody Ackland was a talented musician and guitarist in a local indie rock band, but he had a dark secret. Behind his charming facade, Cody was fascinated with serial killers and had a list of idols that included notorious murderers such as Joseph D'Angelo Jr., Andre Chikatilo, Ivan Milat, Fred West, and Tommy Sells. However, he worshipped a criminal he considered a hero, Ted Bundy, who confessed to killing at least 30 people. Cody's obsession with Ted was evident in the content he consumed. Investigators found 3,216 images on his phone, many of which were disturbing and reminiscent of horror movies. In the lead-up to a young girl named Bobby Ann's death, Cody's internet searches became increasingly focused on serial killers and crimes. He also researched remote locations on Dartmoor, potential weapons, and browsed online stores for items such as baseball bats, ski masks, and waterproof clothing. However, his clandestine activities eventually led him to commit a serious crime. In a tragic twist of fate, Bobby unknowingly crossed paths with Cody. On the evening of the incident, Bobby arrived at the bus stop around 6:15 p.m. Cody, who was driving his Ford Fiesta in the area, spotted her and decided to target her. According to Cody's own confession, Bobby Ann's resemblance to his ex-girlfriend was merely a coincidence and not the reason for the attack. In reality, Cody had been planning to carry out a violent act for some time and was simply looking for a victim. The police investigation concluded that Cody would have carried out his plan regardless of who he encountered, and that Bobby was a random victim. Cody parked his car behind a bus stop after spotting Bobby Ann. He observed her for a few minutes to ensure no one else was around. Then, he retrieved a hammer he had previously purchased and crept up to Bobby Ann, striking her twice in the head. Believing she was dead, Cody returned to his car and began to leave the scene. However, as he drove away, he noticed that Bobby was alive and attempting to get up. Cody returned to the bus stop, moved Bobby Ann's semi-conscious body to his car, and drove 20 miles to the beloved forest parking lot in Dartmoor. At 7:45 p.m., he stopped in the parking lot, which was located in a wooded area. His intention was to leave Bobby Ann's body there, but he discovered that she was still alive and conscious. Despite this, Cody did not seek help or take Bobby to a hospital. Instead, he assisted her out of the car. When Bobby Ann expressed her fear, Cody responded by saying he was scared as well, admitting that he had never committed such an act before. He then struck Bobby 12 times on the head with the hammer. In an attempt to destroy evidence, Cody burned Bobby Ann's purse. Even after inflicting severe injuries on Bobby Ann, she was still able to make a noise, prompting Cody to express his surprise for her resilience. Cody had one last opportunity to save Bobby Ann's life, but he chose not to take it. Instead, he claimed to have ended her suffering. He then placed her body in the trunk of his car and drove approximately 30 miles to Bobby's End, where he hid the body after removing his shoes, clothing, and jewelry. He returned home around 10 p.m. and went to bed. The next day, Cody traveled to Tamerden Foley, north of Plymouth, and disposed of the hammer he used in the crime by throwing it into the River Tamar. He also discarded a bag containing his and Bobby Ann's blood-stained clothing in nearby allotments in Coombe Lane. Despite a thorough search, the hammer was never found. On November 21st, Cody spent the day socializing with friends, attending a pizza gathering, a band rehearsal, and a night out at the pub. Those who saw him that day noticed he was in an unusually good mood, happy, joking, and affectionate with his friends. The following day, November 22nd, Cody continued to enjoy himself, buying popcorn and watching a movie at the theater. Meanwhile, police, family, and volunteers were searching for Bobby Ann, and Cody was keeping up with the latest news on his phone. On November 23rd, Cody went to work at a car service company. During his lunch break, he sent a message to a chat room for his music group, expressing his love for them, and also texted his mother to tell her how much he loved her. Shortly after, he went to the police station and confessed to the crime. Shortly after, Cody's band members have issued a statement on Facebook announcing that they are disbanding the group with immediate effect as a mark of respect for the late Bobby and McLeod. They expressed their shock and disbelief at the tragic events, saying their thoughts and prayers are with Bobby and's family and friends, who must be devastated by their loss. The band members explained that they cannot continue as a group and have decided to go their separate ways. They will not be making any further comments at this time. In a separate development, police revealed that they had found physical evidence linking Cody to the crime scene. This included Bobby and's DNA in his car and on his sneakers. The trial of Cody Ackland took place in May 2022. Cody's attorney, Ray Tully, stated that psychiatrists had evaluated Cody and found that he did not have a mental illness. However, Cody had experienced a difficult childhood and had been diagnosed with ADHD, dyslexia, depression, and anxiety. By the age of 19, Cody had a 7-year history of depression. Ray explained that Cody had not received much support or comfort from his family or school life. Specifically, Cody's father had not provided him with the guidance and support he needed. During sentencing, Judge Robert Linford told Cody that his actions were premeditated and brutal. The judge stated that the evidence showed Cody had intended to kill his victim and that the crime was a prolonged and horrific ordeal for the victim. The judge emphasized that Cody had planned and carried out the murder and that the victim's life had been brutally cut short. As a result, Cody Ackland, 24, was sentenced to life in prison. He will serve a minimum of 31 years before being eligible to apply for parole. Case: the case of Susan Wright. Susan Lucille Wright was born on April 24, 1976, in Houston, Texas, to parents Velma Sue and Jimmy Lawrence Wright. She was the eldest of 2 children and had a biological sister named Cindy. As a child, Susan was active, sociable, and creatively talented. During her school years, she developed a passion for dancing and aspired to become a choreographer. With her bright and attractive appearance, as well as her slender figure, she drew many admirers and being the center of attention. After completing high school, Susan tried, but was unsuccessful in getting into college. To raise funds for her future education, she decided to take some time off. During this period, she found work as a dancer at a well-known nightclub, performing partially nude on stage. She decided to leave her job and use her savings to enroll in evening courses at a nursing school. To support herself and maintain her independence, Susan took a job as a waitress at a restaurant while pursuing her studies. However, she soon discovered that medicine was not her real passion and had trouble paying for her studies. Consequently, she stopped attending her classes to concentrate on her job. In the summer of 1997, 21-year-old Susan met her future husband, Jeffrey Andrew Wright, at the Galveston restaurant where she worked. He was immediately drawn to her beauty and radiant smile, becoming a regular customer and leaving generous tips. After some time, Jeffrey mustered the courage to ask Susan for her phone number. He would call her daily, sometimes multiple times a day, to arrange romantic dates and surprise her with small gestures, such as sending flowers with heartfelt notes to her workplace. In the evenings, he would meet her and walk her home. The man was 8 years older than Susan, but she didn't consider this a significant issue. He was charming, attentive, and caring, which quickly won her over. However, it soon became apparent that Jeffrey struggled with alcohol and substance abuse. He claimed to have overcome his addiction to drugs and promised to quit drinking entirely. Susan, being young and in love for the first time, believed him. She thought that their love could conquer any obstacle. Shortly after, Susan discovered she was pregnant and excitedly shared the news with Jeffrey. Although he seemed pleased about becoming a father, he didn't take any decisive action, such as proposing or suggesting they move in together. Confused by Jeffrey's behavior, Susan took matters into her own hands. She insisted that their child should be born within a married family, and Jeffrey agreed to her terms. By the time they officially got married, Susan was already 8 months pregnant. They chose to have a quiet, intimate wedding without guests or celebrations, rather than a grand ceremony. Around this time, they purchased a home in a quiet area of Harris County, Texas, and moved in a couple of weeks before the birth of their child. In December 1998, they welcomed their first child, a son named Bradley, and appeared to be the perfect family. In 2001, Susan became pregnant again, and in the spring of 2002, she gave birth to a daughter named Kay. The family had a small dog named Buck, a comfortable family car. Jeffrey worked at a local construction company, and after the children were born, Susan became a stay-at-home mom by mutual agreement. She took care of the kids and created a cozy home environment. The neighbors said that Mrs. Susan was a kind person, friendly, sociable, a caring mother, and a loving wife. However, it was later revealed that the reality of their family life was far from perfect. Her husband was extremely demanding in every aspect of their lives. Susan's days were filled with cleaning, doing laundry, and cooking. Jeffrey demanded freshly cooked meals every day, prohibiting her from preparing meals in advance or reheating leftovers. Maintaining a perfect and clean home was a challenging task, especially with two small children. Additionally, Jeffrey required his clothes to be washed almost daily, as he refused to wear the same item twice. If Susan failed to meet these expectations, she faced insults, humiliation, and even physical abuse. Moreover, Jeffrey was extremely frugal, providing Susan with a meager weekly allowance of $100 to cover all household expenses, including cooking, childcare, and maintenance. Susan had to keep track of every expense, giving receipts to her husband Jeffrey. However, Jeffrey's behavior was a bigger issue. Despite promising to quit drinking, he continued and started using drugs, downplaying it as light doping for work stress. The substances made him aggressive, causing him to harm Susan and their son. Jeffrey denied his behavior was a problem, claiming Susan knew about his substance use before marriage. His parents sympathized with Susan, but felt powerless to intervene. After moving in together, Jeffrey's behavior became increasingly aggressive, leading to physical, emotional, and intimate abuse. He initially apologized, but the violence became regular. Jeffrey would often go to the gym 3 times a week to practice boxing as a stress relief measure. He looked forward to sharing this activity with his son when the boy was older. On January 13, 2003, Jeffrey returned home from the gym agitated and on edge. As Susan prepared dinner, he attempted to teach their 5-year-old son some boxing moves but lost control and struck the child, causing the boy to burst into tears. Susan pretended not to notice the incident, but it was the last straw for her. Following dinner, she put the kids to bed. Meanwhile, Jeffrey stayed in the bedroom, where he continued to take drugs. There are different accounts of what happened next. According to Susan, when she went into the room, Jeffrey assaulted her, attempted to rape her, and tried to stab her with a knife. She claimed she fought back in self-defense after managing to take the knife from him. The events that followed are unclear, with different accounts of what happened. According to Susan, when she entered the bedroom, Jeffrey tried to attack her, sexually assault her, and kill her with a knife. However, she claims she managed to grab the knife and defended herself, leading to a fight. Her story changed multiple times, but the version told in court, based on the investigation, was considered more believable. Susan decided to use her dance skills to distract her husband and lower his guard. Wearing a short silk robe over her bare body, she put on a seductive show for Jeffrey. She then suggested a role-playing game that involved tying him up, which he agreed to. Using 3 of Jeffrey's neckties, she bound his hands and one leg to the bed. She used the silk belt from her robe to secure his other leg. With Jeffrey immobilized, Susan created a makeshift gag using her underwear, pretending it was part of the intimate game. To set the mood, she lit candles and turned off the lights. Jeffrey was tied to the bed with a gag in his mouth, unable to move or speak. The room was dimly lit. Jeffrey poured hot wax from a candle onto Jeffrey's chest, which was painful but initially seemed like part of a game they were playing. However, when she poured wax onto his genital area, the pain became unbearable. Jeffrey tried to free himself and scream, but he couldn't. His wife, Susan, took a small sharp knife from the kitchen and began stabbing him repeatedly, starting at his groin and moving up his body, slashing his genitals, legs, abdomen, chest, arms, neck, and face. She began slowly, expressing her grievances with each stab, recounting the insults, humiliations, and abuse she had suffered. As she continued, Susan began to cry and stab faster. Experts later counted 193 shallow knife wounds on Jeffrey's body. Most of these wounds were not fatal, and Jeffrey was conscious for most of the ordeal. Susan's actions suggested she was in a state of extreme emotional distress. Her lawyers argued that she was in a state of affect, unable to stop even when Jeffrey showed no signs of life. She had not considered what she would do next or how she would handle the body. Shallow grave in the backyard, she sat next to her husband's body on the floor for hours. Eventually, she looked around the blood-covered bedroom and knew she had to act before dawn. She carefully checked outside through the window, ensuring the coast was clear. Her gaze landed on a shallow pit in the backyard that Jeffrey had dug for a fountain over the weekend. A plan formed instantly. This pit would become her despised husband's grave. To move the body, Susan used a garden wheelbarrow. This raised questions for investigators, as a petite woman was able to single-handedly lift and transport a man twice her weight out of the house. Suspicions of an accomplice arose but were never confirmed. Under the cover of Susan discreetly relocated the body to the pit and covered it with a thin layer of soil. She then cleaned up, removing the blood-stained curtains and bed linen, placing them in trash bags and dispersing them in different bins. The blood-soaked mattress was flipped over, as Susan was unsure how to properly clean it. She spent the remaining time until dawn scrubbing blood from the floor, walls, and carpet. Scrubbing the carpet is a big deal, with a large stain that couldn't be removed. In an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the violent confrontation, Susan applied bleach to the affected area, hoping the chemicals would destroy any remaining traces. Susan made a distressing call to her husband's parents in Austin, Texas. She was emotional as she recounted events. Her husband, under the influence, had physically assaulted her and their son, spilled bleach on the carpet, and then ended their relationship before leaving. Jeffrey's parents were shocked and concerned by the news. Although they were aware that their son had his flaws, they felt genuine sympathy for their daughter-in-law. However, when they learned that he had hit their grandchild, they immediately offered for Susan and the children to come and stay with them. Despite their willingness to help, the young mother declined their offer. She added that she planned to file a police report and reveal all the incidents that had occurred at their residence. 2 days later, Susan visited the police station as her husband's sudden disappearance raised increasing concerns and action was necessary. Susan reported that she and her children had been victims of domestic violence perpetrated by her husband and required protection. She successfully obtained a restraining order against her husband, preventing him from approaching her and the children, although she was already aware that he would never be able to come near them again. As evidence, Susan presented bruises and cuts on her arms, which she alleged were inflicted by her husband using keys when she attempted to defend herself. Additionally, Susan had a small bruise on his face and corroborated that his father had struck him. At first, the tearful woman's story seemed believable and logical. She claimed her husband, under the influence of alcohol and substances, had attacked her and their young son. Then, realizing what he had done, he became scared and fled. However, over time, suspicions grew because Jeffrey had not contacted anyone. He appeared to have run away without his belongings, documents, or mobile phone. He didn't show up for work or visit his parents, and none of his friends or neighbors had seen him. It was as if he had vanished. Susan found it unbearable to stay in the house where she confronted her husband. She couldn't shake the feeling he was still alive and would rise for revenge. She was losing her grip on reality. Even their dog Buck sensed it, constantly barking and trying to dig up the yard where Jeffrey was buried. On January 17th, Susan went to her mother's house with her children. When her mother saw her daughter in person, she fully realized the severity of the situation. Even though she had already been aware of it, Velma directly asked if she had killed her husband, and her daughter broke down in tears, nodding in admission. The daughter then confessed to the crime, revealing the location of her husband's body, and repeatedly expressed uncertainty about what to do next. Following her mother's advice, Susan reached out to lawyer Neil Davis the next day and confessed to killing her husband and attempting to cover up the crime. After gathering all the details, the experienced defense attorney considered possible scenarios and contacted the Harris County District Attorney's Office on January 19th. Davis reported Susan's confession, including the burial of her husband's body in their backyard, and stated that she was willing to provide a full statement at the police station. On January 24, 2003, Susan voluntarily went to the police station, intent on making a full confession. However, her account was disjointed, with confusing details and occasional contradictions. She sometimes referred to her late husband as if were still alive, expressed fear of him, and requested protection. Consequently, Susan underwent a psychiatric evaluation. The results revealed she had suffered a nervous breakdown and was experiencing depression. Despite this, the evaluation found that Susan was still capable of understanding the actions she had taken. When investigators uncovered the remains of Jeffrey from the makeshift grave in the backyard, they were shocked by the brutality of the scene, having never encountered. Experts counted a total of 193 knife wounds on the victim's body, distributed across various areas, including the groin, legs, shoulders, arms, abdominal area, chest, neck, and face. The majority of these wounds were superficial, meaning they were not life-threatening on their own. However, one head wound was severe enough to have caused death. The large number of superficial wounds suggests that the victim endured a prolonged and agonizing death, likely while still conscious, as his wife repeatedly stabbed him with a small knife. The victim's wrists and ankles showed deep marks from the ties and belt used to bind him. These injuries indicated that the victim had attempted to free himself but was unsuccessful. The ties and belt were still on the body when it was found. Additionally, there were traces of candle wax on the victim's chest and groin area. Susan claimed that the candle wax was an accident, resulting from her husband knocking over a lit candle. However, the prosecution argued that the hot wax was more likely used as a form of torture to inflict suffering on the bound victim. Furthermore, the victim's mouth contained his wife's underwear, which acted as a gag to prevent him from screaming or calling for help. Toxicological tests showed the deceased had alcohol and several controlled substances in his system, which could have led to aggressive and irrational behavior. Initially, the bedroom where the confrontation occurred seemed normal, except for a large bleach stain on the carpet. However, upon closer inspection using special chemical agents and equipment, it became clear that Susan had spent considerable time cleaning up the scene. Once wiped-away blood traces were revealed, the true extent of the violence became apparent. Blood was found throughout the room, including on the ceiling, and the mattress was saturated with it. The trial began in late February 2004, with Susan having already spent a year in custody. Her children were being cared for by her parents and sister Cindy. Her lawyer was well prepared, having worked extensively with Susan to build her case. During the trial, Susan frequently broke down in tears as she recounted the events of that horrific night and the abuse she suffered leading up to it. She claimed to have endured years of cruelty and violence at the hands of her husband. The defendant, Susan, claimed that on the evening of the incident, her husband returned home from training in an agitated state. He began demonstrating boxing techniques to their 5-year-old son, Bradley, and said the boy would also take up boxing. When Bradley refused, his father hit him in the face. Susan put the children to bed and then tried to have a serious talk with her husband, urging him to seek help at a clinic. However, he became angry, grabbed his keys, and tried to leave. Susan attempted to stop him, which led to a struggle that caused injuries to her palms and wrists. According to Susan, her husband then struck her, causing her to fall and momentarily lose her bearings. After regaining composure, Susan saw her husband Jeffrey holding a knife, but her testimony became inconsistent. Her lawyer argued she was in a state of affect, leading her to seize the knife and strike Jeffrey. Susan claimed she secured him to a cart with ties and a belt after the confrontation, and candle wax accidentally landed on his body. However, the defendant had no explanation for why her underwear was found in the victim's mouth. In contrast, the prosecution presented a more convincing and logical case. Expert testimony revealed that the victim's wrist and ankle wounds were inflicted before death, likely as part of a ruse to restrain the victim. This also provided a plausible explanation for the gag in the victim's mouth. Additionally, the angle of the injury suggested that the perpetrator was positioned on top of the victim, rather than struggling with him, which would have resulted in different injury patterns. All the cuts on the victim were inflicted from the front, indicating that the attack occurred while he was lying on his back, unable to move. It was unclear whether Susan had planned her husband's murder in advance and intentionally used the pit he dug for a fountain as a makeshift grave. Prosecutors, however, suspected that she had carefully orchestrated the crime, motivated by the potential insurance payout. The case drew widespread media attention, with Susan being labeled the blue-eyed butcher or blonde meat grinder by the press. Jeffrey's family demanded the harshest possible sentence, while many of their neighbors felt sorry for Susan, recalling instances where she had bruises that she attributed to her own clumsiness, but which may have been signs of physical abuse. Prosecutors initially sought a life sentence for Susan, but later reduced their request to 45 years in prison. In March 2004, she was found guilty and sentenced to 25 years. She showed no emotion when the judge delivered the verdict, appearing detached from the proceedings. A year later, her lawyer's attempt to appeal the decision was rejected. In 2008, Susan and her defense team filed another appeal, which was influenced by new testimony from a previously unknown witness. Misty McKell, wife of former NFL champion Steve McKell, was a key witness. She had a lengthy relationship with Jeffrey Wright in the mid-1990s and was briefly engaged to him. However, she suffered physical abuse, humiliation, and cruel treatment from Jeffrey, leading her to end the engagement and cut ties. Following this new information in Jeffrey's testimony, Susan's prison sentence was reduced to 20 years. She became eligible for parole in 2014 at age 38, but was denied. A second denial followed in July 2017. After 16 years in prison, Susan Wright was released in the winter of 2020 at age 44. She was met by reporters and photographers, causing her to break down in tears and ask to be left alone. Her trial received extensive media coverage, including a broadcast on Court TV. Case 8. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund was born on July 16, 1982, to her mother Vicky. She had two siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda, who looked up to Katrina as a role model. As children, Miranda would often try on Katrina's clothes and use her makeup, admiring her older sister and wanting to be just like her. As the years passed, Katrina and Miranda formed a strong bond, becoming more like best friends than sisters. Katrina grew up in Mosney Park, Illinois, a suburban community outside the city, after her parents separated and she lived with her mother. Those who knew Katrina described her as a kind, fun-loving person who cherished the holiday season and enjoyed giving humorous gifts to her friends and family. She was deeply involved in her church and had a strong desire to help others, always willing to lend a hand to those in need. Despite her happiness, Katrina longed to find love and thought she had found it when she met Todd Smith at a bar when she was 20 years old. Todd, a self-employed financial planner, had 3 daughters and worked from home. He met Katrina, and despite their differences, they clicked. Todd's flexible schedule allowed them to travel frequently. After 3 years together, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. They planned a small wedding in a local park, and Katrina was thrilled about their future. She loved Todd's daughters and was eager to build a life with him. Katrina's family, including her Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, adored Todd and thought he was an excellent match for Katrina. They trusted him to take care of her and believed the couple was meant to be. After marrying, Katrina and Todd settled in Mosney Park and started their new life together. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina, 30, called her mother and said she was house-sitting for a friend. During their conversation, she mentioned she would visit for dinner on October 24th and had news to share. Vicky suspected that something was amiss, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Before ending their phone call, Vicky promised Katrina that she would cook her favorite meal, chicken and dumplings. Tragically, Vicky would never get the chance to keep that promise. Days later, Katrina vanished, and Vicky would never lay eyes on her again. On October 23rd, at 5 p.m., Todd, Katrina's husband, called 911 to report her disappearance. He told the dispatcher that Katrina was house-sitting for a friend and that he had been trying to reach her for hours without success. When he drove to the house, he found it empty. Katrina's siblings, Miranda and Chad, were alarmed when they heard the news. Chad, who was undergoing military training in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help search for his sister. On the evening of the 23rd, a concerned citizen notified the police about an abandoned vehicle near Rock River. The caller reported that the car was not parked on the road, but rather in an easement, suggesting it had been hastily abandoned. When authorities arrived to investigate, they ran the license plate and identified it as belonging to Katrina Smith. Upon inspecting the vehicle, the officer found no signs of a struggle or any trace of Katrina herself. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was adamant that her daughter's disappearance was a clear indication of foul play when she learned that Katrina's car had been abandoned in an unfamiliar area. It was the only logical explanation to Vicky. If Katrina's car was found in that location, someone must have taken her and left the car there. Following the discovery of her car, Katrina's case was officially categorized as a missing person, and the search efforts intensified significantly. On October 12th, at 11 p.m., the police took Todd Smith in for a formal interview at the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. During the interview, Todd told the detective that he last saw his wife, Katrina, on October 10th, not October 22nd. He stated that Katrina had come home briefly to do laundry in preparation for a big job interview the following day. According to Todd, while the laundry was in progress, Katrina left to go to the mall to make a purchase, and returned home at 8:30 p.m. Todd reported that Katrina briefly returned home before leaving again to make one last stop. She had told him she needed to complete an errand before returning to the house she was watching for a friend. The next day, after Katrina was declared missing, Todd made an emotional appeal to the media, pleading for her safe return. Overcome with emotion, he broke down in tears as he begged for anyone with information about her whereabouts to come forward. As the search for Katrina continued, search teams composed of officers and volunteers worked tirelessly to find her. They focused their efforts on a nearby park, where Katrina's car had been abandoned, hoping to find evidence or clues about her disappearance. When Katrina's brother Chad arrived in Illinois from his army training in Oklahoma, he joined the search for his missing sister at the park. With his military background, Chad took charge of the search party. He created a map, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated their efforts to ensure a thorough search. As the search continued, the officers employed a methodical approach, using dogs and walking in straight lines to cover as much ground as possible and detect any potential evidence, no matter how small. Meanwhile, Katrina's mother Vicky focused on spreading awareness about her daughter's disappearance. She posted missing person flyers at gas stations, convenience stores, and lampposts throughout the town, hoping to reach as many people as possible. Despite her overwhelming grief and fear of finding her daughter's body, Vicky was determined to keep searching for Katrina, even if she couldn't participate in the physical search herself. Todd, Katrina's husband, was overcome with emotion during this difficult time. Chad, trying to be supportive, urged Todd to stay strong and focused on finding Katrina. He stood by Todd's side, sympathetic to his brother-in-law's grief. Meanwhile, the police investigation turned up some disturbing clues. An officer found Katrina's purse near her abandoned car, and as he searched further down the road, he discovered more of her belongings, including her cell phone and bloody towels. It was clear that someone had deliberately discarded Katrina's possessions as they drove away from her car. Unfortunately, the police still had no idea where Katrina was, but they feared the worst. The recovered items were sent to the crime lab for analysis, and the police awaited the results with bated breath. As the police searched for clues, they explored every aspect of Katrina's personal life to understand what might have led to her disappearance. They wanted to know if she had any relationships outside her marriage, was involved in gambling or drugs, and what her daily routines were like. To gather this information, they interviewed her friends and family. Everyone they spoke to described Katrina as a kind, responsible person who always put her duties first and avoided anything risky. Her loved ones said she was dedicated to her job and had a strong work ethic. They also reported that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. The people who knew Katrina described her as a loyal partner and a hard worker who always did the right thing. During the investigation into her disappearance, a woman came forward with an interesting clue. She claimed to have seen a blue car, similar to Katrina's, parked on a bridge over Rock River on the night she vanished. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it. Although the witness couldn't describe the person's gender or race, her tip led the police to suspect that Katrina might have been a victim of foul play and ended up in the river. However, they still needed concrete evidence to support this theory. The police continued to investigate Katrina's disappearance, looking into potential motives and suspects. Despite seeming to have a happy marriage, her husband Todd was still a person of interest. As the authorities knew that hidden conflicts or secrets can exist in any relationship, their inquiry led them to a teenager in town who had previously shown an unhealthy obsession with Katrina. Earlier in the year, Katrina had confided in friends about the boy's behavior, including allegations of voyeurism, such as spying on her through her bedroom window. This had made Katrina increasingly anxious at the time. Although the boy's activities had stopped when he left for college, the police wondered if he might have returned and resumed stalking Katrina. They devoted significant resources to finding him. 3 days into the search, crucial clues were discovered on Katrina's cell phone, which was being examined at the crime lab. The phone proved to be a crucial source of evidence for the investigators. By examining Katrina's cell phone records, they uncovered a wealth of information, including her text messages, call logs, pictures, videos, and GPS location data. This information enabled the police to reconstruct a more accurate timeline of Katrina's activities. The investigation revealed that Katrina was having an affair with a coworker, Guy Gabriel. Initially, they had met after work and developed a connection that eventually turned romantic. However, A background check on Guy Gabriel exposed a troubling history of domestic violence. Additionally, the detectives found text messages in which Guy Gabriel demanded that Katrina leave her husband Todd for him. Given Guy Gabriel's violent past and his messages to Katrina, he became the top suspect in her disappearance. The police suspected that Guy Gabriel might have reacted violently towards Katrina because she refused to leave her husband for him. When Katrina's family discovered her affair with Guy, they were shocked and disbelieving. The seemingly perfect couple, Katrina and Todd, had hidden a dark secret. The news of Katrina's infidelity devastated Todd, who was unaware of the affair until the police investigation. Guy Gabriel was questioned by the police at the station, and although he appeared nervous, he admitted to the affair but denied any involvement in Katrina's disappearance. He claimed to have been at work on the night she went missing. During the investigation, the police uncovered an incident that had occurred 2 weeks before Katrina's disappearance. Witnesses reported that a black Volkswagen Jetta had sped through the parking lot of the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, causing a scene during lunchtime. A mysterious driver in a VW Jetta threw a stack of flyers out of the car's sunroof, scattering them among the employees gathered outside. The flyers contained a derogatory remark about Katrina and Guy Gabriel's relationship, but the identity of the driver remained unknown. Meanwhile, the police questioned Katrina's hairstylist, who shared that Katrina had confided in her about feeling unsafe and threatened. Katrina had even considered buying a gun for protection, and had become paranoid about being followed. She had gone so far as to take her phone to a store to check for a tracking device, suspecting that someone was monitoring her movements. At the police garage, crime scene investigators searched Katrina's car for clues, and used a special chemical called luminol to detect blood. They found a large amount of blood in the trunk. Meanwhile, a firefighter pulled a mysterious object from the water, which turned out to be a severely decomposed female body. The body was difficult to identify due to its condition. At the medical examiner's office, dental experts compared the body's teeth to Katrina Smith's dental records and confirmed that the body belonged to her. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Katrina's family was devastated by the news, and her mother, Vicky, was in disbelief. The police cleared the teenage boy who had been allegedly stalking Katrina as a suspect after verifying his alibi. The police then turned their attention to Guy Gabriel, Katrina's boyfriend outside of her marriage. Guy provided an alibi, claiming he was at work during the time of Katrina's disappearance and murder. His managers and co-workers corroborated his alibi, and the police cleared him as a suspect. Although Guy was no longer a suspect, the police asked for his perspective on who may have hurt Katrina. Guy revealed that Katrina's husband, Todd, exhibited controlling behavior and encouraged Katrina to leave her marriage. The police investigated Katrina's marriage and discovered several concerning details, including Katrina's desire to divorce Todd, her meeting with a divorce attorney, and her separation from Todd. The police suspected Todd of being behind the mysterious flyer incident at Katrina's workplace. Their suspicion grew stronger when they discovered that Todd had test-driven a black Jetta, similar to the car involved in the flyer incident, around the same time it occurred. When the police informed Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her murder and was already in custody, they were shocked and devastated. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was particularly affected, feeling physically ill at the thought that Todd could be responsible for her daughter's murder. The police also discovered that Todd's financial investment company was facing legal troubles, providing a potential motive for the crime. Katrina was the sole breadwinner for her family, since Todd was unemployed. The police suspected that Todd might have motive to kill his wife, as he would gain access to their funds if she left him and their daughters. To gather evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for the couple's home. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage with sprays of blood on it, which led them to believe it might be the murder weapon. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, suggesting a bat was used. A DNA test confirmed that the blood on the bat was Katrina's, linking the bat to the crime. The police also found a clean area under the car, which seemed suspicious. Further examination revealed that the blood stains matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, Todd was arrested and charged with her killing, bringing relief to her family. At his trial, the prosecution presented evidence that Katrina had recently visited a divorce attorney, indicating marital problems. On the night of the murder, Katrina had gone to Todd's house to do laundry for a job interview the next morning. The prosecution alleged that Katrina told Todd their marriage was over, triggering his violent reaction. They claimed that Todd grabbed a baseball bat, killed Katrina in the garage, and then disposed of her body by throwing it off a bridge at Rock River. The jury found Todd guilty and sentenced him to 55 years in prison. Case 9. The case of Anna Marie Cochran Rintala. Anna Marie Cochran Rintala was born on July 30, 1972, in Springfield, Hampton County, Massachusetts, USA. She graduated from Cathedral High School and received training at an emergency services school in Granby, Connecticut. After completing her training, she joined AMR Ambulance Medical Services and worked as a paramedic in Springfield and Holyoke. With a deep passion for her work, she always feels happy when she can help others in their difficult times and even save their lives. While working, Anna Marie met Cara Rintala, a fellow paramedic. The two have completely opposite personalities. Cara is calm, while Anna Marie is natural and open. Yet in 2004, they married, marking one of the first same-sex marriages in the United States. They later adopted a baby girl named Brianna. However, their marriage was not always smooth. On the evening of March 28, 2010, they had an argument over the phone. During this time, a friend of Cara visited their home, and when Anna Marie called from work to check in, she overheard the friend's voice. The friend's presence, without Anna Marie's prior knowledge, left her feeling betrayed. She believed Cara's failure to inform her of the visit was an act of disrespect. Around midnight, she texted Cara, expressing her frustration and stating that she hated their relationship. The following evening, on March 29th, Cara returned home to find Anna Marie dead at the bottom of the basement stairs in their Granby, Massachusetts home. When police arrived at the scene, they found Cara clutching Anna Marie's body, crying and screaming in despair. Initial investigations revealed that Anna Marie had been strangled, sustained head injuries, and that her body was covered in bright paint. Cara told police that Anna Marie had returned home around 8:30 a.m. after finishing her overnight shift. They had coffee together, played with their daughter Brianna, and had lunch. In the afternoon, Anna Marie asked Cara to take Brianna out so she could rest before her next shift that evening. Cara claimed she left the house around 3 p.m. and returned at 7 p.m., at which point she discovered Anna Marie unresponsive at the bottom of the basement stairs. She immediately took Brianna to a neighbor's house and asked them to call 911 before turning around and holding Anna Marie tightly until police arrived. During the investigation, it was revealed that Anna Marie's romantic life prior to her death was complicated. She had been involved in a relationship with Mark Oleksic, a married man she met through her job. Initially, they were just colleagues, but over time, they grew closer. On the day of her death, she texted Mark, asking if he could pick her up at Best Buy at 6 a.m. Additionally, Anna Marie, who loved to shop, convinced Mark to co-sign 3 credit cards, including one with an outstanding balance of about $7,000. When questioned by authorities, Mark provided an alibi, claiming that on the day of Anna Marie's death, he had been out shopping and had receipts to prove it. Prosecutors also confirmed that there was no evidence suggesting Mark was angry about the debt, and Anna Marie had in fact paid him back. During her breakup with Cara a year before Anna Marie's death, she also rekindled her relationship with her ex-girlfriend, Springfield Police Officer Carla Daniele. During this time, she owed another $10,000 to Danielle's account before deciding to get back together with Cara in late 2009. However, at the time of the incident, Daniele was at the gym about half an hour away from the scene, and surveillance footage proved Danielle's testimony to be accurate. With no other clues to continue their investigation, detectives returned to focusing on Cara. Upon closer investigation, they discovered that Cara and Anna Marie's relationship was not only strained, but also violent. Colleagues had observed bruises on Anna Marie's body, although she often dismissed them as accidental injuries from bumping into objects. In 2008, Cara was arrested for assaulting Anna Marie, but she later withdrew the charges. Financial stress likely exacerbated their problems, as both were dealing with significant debt. Anna Marie owed $33,510 in credit card debt, while Cara owed $35,000. Additionally, Anna Marie had a habit of overspending and had secretly opened a credit account under Cara's name without Cara's knowledge. In 2009, Anna Marie and Cara each filed for divorce, but never finalized the process. During their separation, Anna Marie temporarily moved into her own apartment in South Hadley, but they reconciled in November of that year. In early 2010, In an effort to repair their relationship, Anna Marie and Kara took their daughter Brianna on a Caribbean cruise, hoping to start fresh. Investigators began questioning the timeline provided by Kara. According to her account, she left home around 3 p.m. that day, but she was not spotted on any surveillance cameras until around 5 p.m. At that time, the cameras showed Kara throwing a rag into a trash bin in the parking lot of a McDonald's in Holyoke. Upon testing, DNA traces belonging to Anna Marie were found on the rag. 2 weeks later, Kara filed a claim for Anna Marie's $512,000 life insurance policy. The payout, however, was delayed due to objections from Charles Cochran, Anna Marie's brother, and the contingent beneficiary. Charles argued that Kara should not receive the money because she might have been involved in Anna Marie's death. Following the incident, Kara took a leave of absence from work and moved in with her mother and stepfather in Narragansett, Rhode Island, along with her daughter Brianna. She explained that she was not mentally fit to return to the home she had shared with Anna Marie. 6 months later, she sold the house and returned to work for the Ludlow Fire Department. During this period, she stayed with friends in Springfield and traveled back and forth between Rhode Island and Springfield to stay with her parents and Brianna when off duty. In April 2011, Kara resigned from her position and permanently moved to Narragansett to work full-time. Massachusetts State Police Detective Jamie McGarrion, the lead investigator in the case, stated that when he arrived at the scene around 7:20 p.m., Anna Marie's body was already stiff. However, the paint spilled across the scene was still wet, leading him to suspect that someone had tampered with the scene after Anna Marie's death. This unusual detail suggested that the crime scene had been deliberately staged to appear like a break-in. The paint seemed to have been used to cover bloodstains, and a nearby overturned 5-gallon can of paint was found. Additionally, a former medical examiner concluded that Anna Marie likely passed away sometime in the late morning to early afternoon. This raises the possibility that Kara was home at the time, making her testimony even more doubtful. Despite largely circumstantial evidence, Kara was arrested and charged with murder in October 2011. She is currently being held at the Western Massachusetts Regional Women's Correctional Center in Chicopee. Her first 2 trials, in 2013 and 2014, ended in mistrials due to deadlocked juries. However, in her 3rd trial in 2016, prosecutors presented evidence from an expert on paint drying times, as well as angry text messages exchanged between Kara and Anna Marie the night before the incident. They argued that Kara tried to fabricate an alibi by taking her daughter out after the crime. Prosecutors contended that on the day of the murder, Kara and Anna Marie had a heated argument, during which Anna Marie fell down the stairs. In a panic, Kara, frightened by a judge's warnings months earlier that Child Protective Services would intervene if the fights continued, strangled Anna Marie. Faced with the choice of calling for help and risking prosecution, losing her home, daughter, and livelihood, or attempting to cover up what happened, Kara allegedly opted for the latter. This time, the jury convicted Kara of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. However, that ruling was overturned in 2021, when a higher court determined that expert testimony about paint drying times was unreliable, leading to a retrial. Kara, who continues to maintain her innocence, made her 4th court appearance on September 6, 2023. During this trial, prosecutors focused on the timeline of the incident and did not call any experts to testify about the paint found at the scene. Kara's defense team countered the timeline with testimony from their own medical expert, who asserted that Anna Marie could have died after 3 p.m. that day. After a month-long trial, on October 5, 2023, Judge Francis Flannery of the Hampshire Superior Court delivered the verdict. Kara Rintala was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a lesser charge compared to first-degree murder. The key distinction between these 2 charges lies in intent. First-degree murder requires a clear, premeditated plan or extreme cruelty, whereas voluntary manslaughter refers to an unplanned killing that occurs in the heat of passion or during a sudden confrontation. The sentencing terms for the 2 crimes are also completely different. While first-degree murder carries a life sentence without the possibility of parole, intentional manslaughter carries a maximum sentence of 20 years. Ultimately, Kara Rintala was sentenced to 12 to 14 years in prison, minus credit for time already served. Brianna, their daughter, is currently living with Kara's parents and occasionally visits her in prison. Since Anna Marie's death, Kara and her parents have refused to allow Anna Marie's parents to see Brianna. Recently, a judge in Rhode Island granted supervised visitation rights to Anna Marie's parents, Lucian and William Cochran, who live in Springfield and often care for Brianna. Years after Anna Marie's murder, the people of Massachusetts remain shocked and saddened by the tragedy. Russell Anderson, chief of the Granby Fire Department, who had employed both Anna Marie and Kara as EMTs, stated that both were excellent employees who always performed their duties well. He shared that he wanted Anna Marie's attacker to be brought to justice, but admitted he could never have imagined the perpetrator would turn out to be her partner. 40 years ago, an American teenager was found bludgeoned to death in a cemetery in New Jersey. Her face was so badly injured that it was impossible to identify her at the time. The American public began to refer to her as Princess Doe, the Jane Doe who had died too young. For 4 decades, her real name has been a mystery until now. Hi, and welcome to Mysterious 7. I'm Michael, and today's episode, I'm going to take you guys through the story of how Princess Doe was killed, how her identity was revealed, and how her killer was finally caught. Let's get right into it. Princess Doe was a previously unidentified American teenager from West Babylon, New York. She was found murdered in Cedar Ridge Cemetery in Blairstown, New Jersey, on the 15th of July, 1982. Her face had been bludgeoned beyond recognition. Her case gained national attention, and the public took a special interest in unraveling her story and finding answers. She became the first unidentified dead body to be entered into the National Crime Information Center. On the morning of Thursday, July 15, 1982, at around 8 a.m., gravedigger George Keyes discovered the body of a young girl in the rear section of the Cedar Ridge Cemetery in Blairstown, New Jersey. The body was found lying on its back, just over a steep bank that leads to a creek below. The victim's face had been beaten beyond recognition with a yet-to-be-determined object. Due to the significant decomposition of her body, even her eye color could not be confirmed. The young girl was dressed in a red short-sleeved shirt. A peasant-style skirt was found lying on top of the victim's legs. No footwear or undergarments were found. No conclusive evidence was found, but this was difficult to determine because of how much the body was decayed. A golden cross necklace was found tangled in the victim's hair. 2 earrings were found in her left ear. Red nail polish was found on the right hand only, and she had no surgical scars, distinct birthmarks, or tattoos. Scars or marks on the head or face area could not be known due to the condition of the body. Forensic anthropologists determined that the victim was not pregnant and had never given birth, and was most likely between the ages of 18 and 14 years old at the time of her death. Toxicology did not reveal any traces of drugs, but was not entirely conclusive because of the time elapsed between the death and the discovery of the body. It is believed that the body was discovered after 2 to 3 days, or possibly even weeks, of exposure to the elements. This was especially difficult to determine because of the hot and humid weather in the area at that time. The forensic examination indicated that the girl had attempted to fight back or defend herself from her attacker, as injuries indicating trauma to her hands and arms were visible. The girl's body was buried in the Cedar Ridge Cemetery, not far from where she was discovered in January 1983. Donated funds were used to pay for the victim's coffin and headstone. The headstone was engraved with the text, "Princess Doe, missing from home, dead among strangers, remembered by all." For many years, Princess Doe was thought to be Diane Janice Guy, a missing teenager from San Jose, California, who vanished on July 30, 1979. This theory was propagated by several law enforcement officials in the state of New Jersey, who went as far as to hold a press conference identifying Diane Guy as Princess Doe. However, Lieutenant Eric Krantz, the Princess Doe case's original lead investigator, maintained that Diane Guy was not a viable candidate for Princess Doe's identity. Krantz's feelings were shared by Diane's family and investigators in California, who were particularly angered by the conduct of the New Jersey law enforcement. In 2003, Princess Doe's DNA was compared with a DNA sample from Diane's mother, Patricia, and it was conclusively determined that Princess Doe was not Diane Guy. After seeing images of the girl's clothing in the newspaper, a witness named Marie Latimer reported to officials that she remembered seeing a girl wearing the same clothing as Princess Doe, purchasing cigarettes on July 13, 1982, just 2 days before her body was found. Latimer stated that she was shopping with her daughter at a supermarket across from the cemetery and observed, and was able to describe the victim's clothing. The shirt and skirt themselves were traced to a manufacturer in the Midwestern United States, although the brand labels were missing. 3 people reported, after viewing the photos, that they had bought similar clothes at a Long Island store, which is now closed. On September 22, 1999, the body of Princess Doe was exhumed from the Cedar Ridge Cemetery in Blairstown, so that DNA samples could be taken. The body was reburied in the same location. After a 2012 photo composite of the victim was released, it generated new tips, as it resembled several missing girls from across the country. One theory was submitted that Princess Doe may have been a runaway, and could have been an individual using false names while employed at a hotel in Ocean City, Maryland. In 2012, a sample of her hair and a tooth were examined through isotope analysis, and indicated that the victim was most likely born in the United States, at least 7 to 10 months in the Midwestern or Northeastern United States. The tooth sample indicated she could be from Arizona. It is also believed that the girl had spent a long time in Long Island, New York. Lieutenant Krams, now retired, coined the name Princess Doe early in the investigations, and also managed to get the case covered extensively in the media. The case was used as the impetus for recording unidentified crime victims. In the MCIC database at the national level, Princess Doe became the first such case entered by the FBI director. After extensive print media coverage in 1982, Lieutenant Krams, who was the original lead investigator from the Blairstown Police Department, was contacted by HBO regarding the Princess Doe case, and asked if the channel could chronicle the case in an upcoming documentary entitled Missing. Krams agreed, and the segment was filmed over several weeks. Krams was shown following leads as they came in. The documentary featured actual footage of the recovery of Princess Doe's body, along with footage shot by HBO of Princess Doe's 1983 funeral. The case was also featured on America's Most Wanted in 2012 in hopes of generating new information about the case. The same year, the most recent reconstruction was broadcast on CNN. On July 15, 2012, a memorial service was held for the 30th anniversary of Princess Doe being discovered at the top of the ravine where her remains were found. Over 100 citizens attended, as well as several reporters and cameras. The victim's clothing as well as her photo reconstructions were on display for public viewing. On October 12, 2014, Princess Doe was honored at a missing persons rally in the area. In the years between the first discovery in the body and the final identification, several theories cropped up. The first one was that Princess Doe was actually Diane Dye, a young girl missing from California, which has now been definitively disproved. Secondly, the killer of Princess Doe was already in prison for another homicide. A man called John Reese was briefly suspected as he was convicted of killing another woman in nearby Belvedere, New Jersey, but there was no real evidence of a connection with Princess Doe. The third theory was that Princess Doe was either a runaway that was known to work in the Ocean City, Maryland area, or a prostitute who worked at the local truck stop. The information for these two possibilities was highly inconclusive. Nobody from the local area came forward to identify Princess Doe on or off the record. It seems unlikely that not one single person would come forward if she was known in the area. The fourth and disturbing theory was that Princess Doe was killed by a Blairstown police officer, and that is why the case was never solved. But this claim is completely unsubstantiated. There are retired local law enforcement officers who still follow and contribute to the case, even after 40 years. The fifth theory was that Princess Doe was a victim of a serial killer known to operate in the area, such as John Kleiss, Henry Lee Lucas, or Joel Rifkin. Though local law enforcement was aware of these claims, none were found to be credible. A sixth theory was that Princess Doe was an out-of-state teenager who worked at an area camp. Again, this was never proven. And now we come to the seventh theory, that Princess Doe was killed by a man named Arthur Kinlaw. For many years, this was the most current theory. Many of the facts fit the case, and this theory was explored on the America's Most Wanted website. Several New York Newsday articles reference this theory that was published in 1999 and 2000. Mr. Kinlaw was already in prison for other crimes, but since Princess Doe's body wasn't identified, his involvement in her murder could not be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Princess Doe's body was re-exhumed in November 2020 using a grant, and she underwent DNA extraction for genetic genealogy. In May 2021, investigators were notified by the NCMEC, or National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who were collaborating with Astria Forensics about obtaining DNA markers from degraded samples of Princess Doe's body using a grant. On June 18, 2021, investigators received the news that Astria Forensic agreed to extract DNA and construct a DNA profile. On February 10, 2022, Astria Forensics relayed to investigators that the creation of a DNA data file was successful. The results were sent to the NCMEC's consulting genealogist from Innovative Forensics Investigations. The managing officer was Jennifer Moore, who agreed to perform unlimited genealogy testing free of charge. On February 22, 2022, Innovative Forensics announced to investigators that they had found a candidate for Princess Doe. Investigators went to West Babylon, New York, where they met Robert Alagnac Jr., Princess Doe's brother. They also collected a DNA sample from Princess Doe's sister, which mitotyping technology used to build a mitochondrial DNA profile. The Union County Prosecutor's Office Forensic Laboratory assisted by creating an STR DNA profile through the victim's sister's DNA sample. Mitotyping technology sent their results to the Union County Prosecutor's Office Forensic Laboratory, then sent both the mitochondrial DNA and STR DNA profiles to the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification. On April 29, 2022, the center identified Princess Doe as Dawn Alagnac. Her identity was formally announced on July 15, 2022, the 40th anniversary of her discovery. Robert Alagnac Jr. said that Alagnac left their home at her mother's request, and she was never seen or heard from again. Way back in 1999, evidence came to light that Arthur and Donna Kinlaw may have been involved in Princess Doe's murder. Donna was arrested in California for attempting to commit welfare fraud by using the name Eliana, which was traced to a Long Island native. When the police questioned her, she gave them details about the murder of Linda, and her testimony put the Kinlaws behind bars. Donna gave details about 2 murders Arthur had committed of 2 other female victims who remain unidentified today. After Arthur was faced with a sentence, Donna told authorities that Kinlaw had killed another woman, a sex worker, earlier in 1982. She told police that she was with Arthur in the cemetery and witnessed him commit the murder. Another report states that Donna Kinlaw said that in July 1982, her husband brought home a teenage girl, left home, and returned without her. He later apparently disposed of his clothing and cleaned his vehicle. Afterward, he threatened his wife, claiming if she did not attend her job, he would take her life as he did to the girl he brought home. However, a lack of cooperation meant that Arthur Kinlaw was not charged. Lieutenant Stephen Spears, who worked on the case as a member of the Warren County Prosecutor's Office, from which he is now retired, stated that Kinlaw claimed responsibility for her death, but I have no physical evidence to confirm that, and without the identity of Princess Doe, I have no way of connecting the dots, so to speak, putting her in a place where he could have been or would have been at the same time. Spears also reported that he doubted the confession because the Kinlaws could not provide a name for Princess Doe, even though they claimed to have been with her for some time. Even though he questioned the credibility of their statements, Spears does not believe the victim was native to Long Island, New York. However, Donna Kinlaw was interviewed by a forensic artist who created a sketch of the girl she claimed to have met, which does resemble the recent composite. Arthur Kinlaw remained incarcerated for 2 counts of second-degree murder. Following the 2022 investigation of Princess Doe as Dawn Alagnac, Arthur Kinlaw was reconsidered as a suspect and later charged with Alagnac's murder. Dawn Alagnac was born on August 5, 1964. She had been a junior at Connequot High School in Bohemia, New York, where she had lived with her mother and sister, authorities said, but she soon moved out of the family home. According to her brother, she was thrown out of her home by her mom. She ended up getting killed in a cemetery, leaving no clue as to her real identity, but for more than 20 years the name of her suspected killer was no secret. In 1999, the wife of Arthur Kinlaw, the convicted pimp who today is serving time for the murder of many other Long Island women, tied her husband not only to those deaths, but to the brutal slaying of the girl in the Blairstown Cemetery. In an interview with Newsday at the time, Donna Kinlaw recounted how her husband, in the summer of 1982, brought a girl of about 18 years old back to their Central Islip home. She told the newspaper as well as police that her husband left with the woman, but later returned home alone, appearing shaken. About 2 weeks later, according to Newsday, she read that police in Belvedere, New Jersey, had found the body of a dead girl who fit the description of the girl who was in their house that night. He kept saying, "What does it say? What does it say? Does it say who the person was who got killed?" She said her husband asked. From the story she read aloud to her husband, Donna Kinlaw told Newsday that she remembered that the New Jersey police named the dead girl Princess Jane Doe. Not long afterward, investigators exhumed her body to recover the murder victim's femur bone in hopes of using her DNA to identify her. And in fact, investigators acknowledged that Arthur Kinlaw confessed to the New Jersey murder in written statements dating back to 2005. But it was not until April of this year that Don Ollinet was positively identified. Arthur Kinlaw, now 68, is currently in prison in Sullivan County, New York, on 2 other first-degree murder convictions from 2000. Among them was a teenager he knew only as Linda in April 1984 in the Bronx, Newsday reported. "I strangled her with my hand," said Kinlaw. "She was hit about the head by me with a bat." Arthur Kinlaw has now been charged with 1 count of homicide as the result of the subsequent investigation, witness statements, and his confession of Ollinet's murder. It is believed that after Don Ollinet refused his demands to go into prostitution, he drove her to New Jersey. They both ended up in Blairstown, where Kinlaw murdered her in the Cedar Ridge Cemetery. Neither Ollinet nor Kinlaw had a connection with the town. Kinlaw remains imprisoned at the Sullivan Correctional Facility in Fallsburg, New York. Investigators are now looking to piece together Don Ollinet's movements in the time leading up to her death. The DNA Doe Project, also DNA Doe Project Incorporated or DDP, is an American non-profit volunteer organization formed to identify unidentified deceased persons, more commonly known as John or Jane Doe. By using forensic genealogy, their volunteers identified victims of automobile accidents, homicides, and unusual circumstances, such as persons who committed suicide under an alias. The group was founded in 2017 by Colleen Fitzpatrick and Margaret Press. Unraveling the mystery of Princess Doe has been a sensational success for genealogical DNA testing of exactly this kind. Sometimes the smallest things make the biggest impact, and for the case of Princess Doe, that was exactly what happened. A molar root weighing just 200 kilograms would hold the answers that had eluded investigators for close to 40 years. With the help of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Princess Doe's molar and eyelash were submitted to Astria Forensics in 2021 for possible DNA extraction. What is so special about Astria is that they can extract DNA from samples that are degraded or otherwise would provide no value, said Carol Schweitzer, a forensic supervisor at NCMEC. "We knew that if anyone could get the information that was needed, Astria could, and they did." Kelly Kincaid, CEO of Astria Forensics, told NCMEC that they were lucky to find that the DNA was exceptionally well preserved and allowed for millions of pieces of information to be gathered to complete the DNA profile. This single DNA extract contained hundreds of millions of unique human DNA fragments, said Kelly. With these sequencing data, we were able to reconstruct her whole genome single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SMP profile. This resulted in Astria being able to deliver genotype files to NCMEC and the Warren County Prosecutor's Office that could go on and be used to complete Princess Doe's genealogy. This technology that would not have been possible 40 years ago was just the break the investigators had been hoping for to identify Princess Doe's identity. Once Astria finished the sequencing, Innovative Forensic Investigations, or IFI, started to work on investigative genetic genealogy techniques to build a family tree that would ultimately lead to the true identity of Princess Doe, or who we now know as Dawn Ollenyock. This work was only possible because of the collaborative effort of each agency, said Jennifer Moore, CEO of IFI. Our team brings forward a diverse set of skills that allows us to help find answers to cases. Echoing Moore's sentiment in today's press conference, Prosecutor Pfeiffer reiterated that science and technology made the impossible possible in this case. Dawn's case was deeply personal for the investigators involved, and their push for answers and justice never wavered. Dawn's family expressed deep gratitude to everyone who worked to find answers in Dawn's case. "This is a very big deal for my family," said Dawn's cousin. "I'd like to thank Blairstown for treating my cousin like she was one of their own. It touches our family deeply. My cousin is always in my heart," he said while tapping the photo of Dawn pinned to his chest. "Blairstown gave it their all, and we were greatly appreciative of that." Since Princess Doe was the first unidentified persons case to be entered into NCIC, the National Crime Information Center, by the director of the FBI, William Webster, on June 30, 1983, This was a historic moment for missing and unidentified persons that has continued to play a crucial role in investigations since. The entry in NCC has remained current and alive until today, when she will be removed. The tenacity of law enforcement has never stopped, and they continue to pour resources and new technology into solving this case. And it's thanks to the collaboration between police authorities and genealogical DNA testing experts that Princess Doe was publicly identified on the 40th anniversary of the discovery of her body as Dawn Alanyok. So, what do you guys think about this 40-year-old case finally getting resolved? Do you still have any theories about Princess Doe? Let us know in the comments section.